Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is 1 o'clock, and we are going to be starting soon with day number 2 of our North Dakota Ready Mix and Concrete Products Association Winter Workshop. We want to thank all of you for joining us today. I am Art Thompson, Director of the North Dakota Ready Mix and Concrete Products Association. On behalf of our association, I want to welcome you here today, and we're excited to have you. A couple of things that we want to go through real quickly. Each one of our sessions are being recorded. They will be available for playback at a later date. PDH credits will be emailed to all attendees on tomorrow on Friday, so you will get a certificate for your attendance. You must remain, must remain logged in to receive that. Questions during the event, everyone is muted right now. If you do have a question, we would encourage you to type it into the Q&A panel. We will do our best to answer questions after the presentations if time allows. Otherwise, we will follow up with you after the event. We will have some prize drawings for those of you that are in attendance. If you are unable to accept the prize drawing due to your employment, please send Savannah Schmidt an email and just simply opt out. For this afternoon, I'm very excited with the agenda that we have on day number 2. We are going to start with Dr. Jeremy Gregory, Director of the MIT Concrete Sustainability Hub. He's going to share with us a bunch of the research that group has done on the economically efficient management of pavement networks, some tools and tips for all of you. And then we're going to close out with Dan Rozycki with the future of highways. Now, this is going to be a fun look at what the future holds for all of us in the pavement design arena. I won't go into too many details because Dan shared with us some of his slides, but I think you're all going to be very impressed with that presentation. And then capping off today is kind of our signature event for the association. It is our 2020 Gold Star Excellence in Concrete Awards. There are 10 award-winning projects constructed over the last 18 months, and we're going to share those with all of you, as well as hear from the members of the project teams that built those projects. So a great afternoon, and we're going to continue to get after it. So first, we want to also point out, though, that all of this content is being brought to you by our sponsors. Of course, all of our events throughout the year would not be possible without our industry partners, so thank you to the companies listed on the screen that are our platinum level sponsors for this year's event. We also want to thank our gold level sponsors. Your contributions to our efforts are very much recognized and appreciated. In addition to the paid sponsorships, we also received some in-kind donations from Houston Engineering, KLJ, and Mountain Plains. We also very much appreciate those as well. As I mentioned, we do have some prizes. I should mention that, sorry about that, Dale and Dustin. We have North Dakota LTAP behind the scenes providing our broadcast today. They've been doing a great job, and really very happy that our associations have partnered together to bring you this virtual event. Next up, we want to thank the companies that are donating to our scholarship fund prize drawings. Each year we typically raffle off prizes. This year, everybody that paid to attend this conference is going to have their name go into a drawing. So thank you, Ashgrove Cement, Lafarge Wholesome, Boral Resources, GCC, Lehigh Hansen, and our board of directors for the following gifts. A portion of your registration fees will go to support our scholarship program. Prize drawings will be held tomorrow based on the attendee lists from yesterday and today. So that ends our announcements. Let's begin with this afternoon's program. The Concrete Sustainability Hub at MIT was created in 2009 and is a leading research hub that includes a team of dedicated researchers and from several departments within MIT to work along with other leaders from academia, industry, and the government to advance concrete and infrastructure science, engineering, and economics. You can see their website on your screen. If you haven't spent time on the CSHub, I would certainly recommend you do that after Jeremy and Dan's presentations. Don't go there now. We want you to listen to what they have to say, but there's a tremendous amount of research available to you on that website. We are very fortunate to have the executive director of the CSHub with us today. Dr. Jeremy Gregory is also a research scientist at the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at MIT. His presentation today will focus on the various research that provides guidance to agencies on the economically efficient management of pavement systems. Please help me welcome and give your attention to Dr. Jeremy Gregory.
Great, thank you very much. Let me open it up there. Okay. Great. Well, I'm delighted to be here with you, Art. I went to my undergraduate was at Montana State University, so not too far away from you folks. I'm very familiar with that part of the country and enjoy it very much. Today, what I'm going to talk to you about is our research at the MIT Concrete Sustainability Hub about economically efficient management of pavement networks. And the motivation for us to do this work is really that, we're not getting sufficient investment in our road system. And there's all kinds of resources like, I'm sure you hear about the ASCE grades. About a significant portion of our highways are in poor condition, and a big part of that is because of a investment gap. That is basically, the needs that we have are over $2 trillion, whereas the estimated funding, is under $1 trillion. So that's a pretty significant gap. And part of this is that governments are being forced to do more with less. This is showing an article from the New York Times a few years ago that show combined local, state, and federal gas taxes, right, from low to high. And this chart is showing, how gas taxes revenue went down, obviously in the oil crisis in the 70s, but then increased quite a bit, but then is starting to taper off. And it's because most states don't tie their gasoline tax to inflation. And so they're worth less over time. And also as vehicles become more fuel efficient, consumers are using less gas. And that's led to then infrastructure spending being at an all-time low. This chart here is showing infrastructure spending as a percentage of GDP, and it's the lowest it's been in a long time. So this is really led to many different challenges. And in fact, what's interesting is the American Society of Civil Engineers, when they had to come up with one single grand challenge, they said it's that we need to reduce life cycle costs by 50% by 2025. And of course, a couple of years ago, that seemed like a long ways away, but now that we're in 2021, it seems like it's just around the corner. And so this life cycle cost analysis then is going to be a real key element of addressing that funding gap, because obviously we could get more funding to close that gap, or another way is we could just be more efficient and decrease the amount of funding that we need. And so a big part of the research that we're doing is in asset management, because when ASCE talks about solutions to raise the grade, they have some things in here about fixing the trust fund, increasing investment, but this bottom one here basically says we need to use asset management best practices to prioritize projects and improve the conditions, security, and safety of assets while minimizing costs over its entire lifespan. So basically, we just need to use asset management practices to be more efficient. So what I'm going to talk to you about today are some tools that we can use for economically efficient management of pavement networks. The first one is competitive paving prices. The second one is life cycle cost analysis. And the third one is asset management. Okay, and I'll talk about them one at a time, starting with competitive paving prices. And the motivation for this work was really a question that was asked of us by some of our sponsors about whether the presence of competition between material substitutes impacts pavement material prices. And the way that we analyzed this question was doing some statistical analyses using this Oman bid tabs data, which is a database of all kinds of different paving projects from almost all the states, 47 states. It includes, we studied data for 10 years from 2005 to 2015, 300,000 different pay items and about 165,000 different jobs. And we did statistical analyses looking at many different parameters for each project, paving project. So like, what's the quantity of projects that are being used? We call that project size. What's the total amount of spending in the state? You know, what's the market size? Were any price adjustment clauses used, which is a common thing for asphalt? How many bidders were there on a project? And we call that intra-industry competition, so competition within the industry. If we know it's going to concrete, how many concrete different contractors bid on it? That's intra-industry competition, as opposed to inter-industry competition, which is more about competition between asphalt and concrete. And so the proxy for that is what's the dominant market share? And so in most states, that is going to be asphalt. And so what's the percentage spending on that? And we are able to get some data on how much variation that there is across different states. You can see in a lot it's quite dark, meaning that this is showing the 10-year spending, average spending on asphalt across those. In the Midwest, you actually have some lighter colors there. And keep in mind, this is just for DOT related projects, so it doesn't include like municipalities or counties or things like that. And what we found, what we are trying to do in this statistical analysis is look at how do these parameters compare to basically material prices in the state. Well, like statistically, how much are these things driving the prices on both asphalt and concrete? And the results of this statistical model are shown right here, and these are many of the different factors that I mentioned: project size, state market size, you know, intra-industry competition, inter-industry competition. And these bars are basically showing that, you know, if you make changes in this parameter, how much of an impact would that have on asphalt prices and concrete prices? And what you can see is that, you know, project size is a really big determining factor, whereas this market share or inter-industry competition is also a pretty big deal. So that really does have an impact on both asphalt and concrete prices. Then using that statistical model, we can then try and estimate, you know, like basically if a state was spending, we just chose an average of 5% on concrete, and then if we increase this level of concrete market share to 10%, 15%, 20 or 25, how much would that decrease paving material prices, right? So if we increase market share from 5% on concrete to 10%, it would decrease asphalt prices by 3% or concrete by 13%. And so this isn't a specific prediction, it's just saying that statistically across all the data that we looked at, you know, when we see higher competition, these are the amounts of lower spending that we see on asphalt and concrete, right? Then what we can do is kind of estimate if you were to implement that increased competition, how much more paving could you do for a fixed budget, right? Because if you lower prices for both asphalt and concrete, that means you have for that amount of money, you can actually do more paving. So if you're at that 5%, then increase it to 10, 15, 20, 25%, you know, for that 25%, you can actually pave more, about 6.5% increase in total paving tonnage. So I don't think it's rocket science, you know, that if you get more competition, you're able to lower prices. What was interesting for us is that the data that we were able to evaluate really bore that out, that in this a paving market, that is something that we see. So competitive paving prices is, you know, one of the first tools that we see for economically efficient management of pavement networks. The second tool is life cycle cost analysis, and you're likely familiar with this. It's a method for evaluating total costs of ownership. And what it allows you to do is if you have two alternatives, you know, alternative A and alternative B, and this is showing real costs over time, we look at those initial construction costs But then we also need to look at what are costs associated with rehabilitation that happens in the future. So for example, this alternative A is a higher initial cost, but it is much lower costs that happen in the future. And we can sum those up to get the total life cycle costs. In this case, A had higher initial costs, but lower life cycle costs. And we've developed some models that allow you to look at uncertainty in what happens in the future. And that's what I mean by probabilistic. Just means we incorporate uncertainty. And as you can imagine, there are many sources of uncertainty. When it comes to the transportation agency, there's uncertainty in the unit price of inputs and also the quantity of inputs. And then on the agency side, there's also uncertainty on how much you're going to be using in the future, when you're going to be doing different actions, and what are future construction prices. There's also what we call user costs. There are costs associated with traffic delays and fuel loss. So there's uncertainty associated with those things as well. And one of the things that we wanted to look at is how do life cycle cost analysis results change depending on context, like where you are in the country, for example. And so we looked at a wide range of different scenarios, including wet no freeze climate in Florida, a wet freeze climate in Missouri, a dry freeze climate in Colorado, and a dry no freeze climate in Arizona. So we wanted to understand how do life cycle cost analysis results change depending on location, and also depending on what kind of traffic levels you have on roads, right? So ranging from urban interstate down to rural local streets and highways. And we also looked at a few different framing conditions. What type of pavement designs are used? Is it asphalt or concrete? Which kind of maintenance schedules, design life, and analysis period? So some of the things that we found is that, the life cycle perspective really matters, and those future costs can be really significant. This is showing the total life cycle cost for a state highway in Florida. What you can see is that out of that life cycle cost, we have initial construction costs here, but those future maintenance and rehabilitation costs are higher than those initial construction costs. So if you're just making decisions based only on this, you're really missing out on what's going to end up being the more significant costs, which is those activities that happen in the future. The other thing we found is that this context really matters. For example, if I take an interstate rigid pavement design in Colorado, you can see the initial costs really dominate the life cycle cost of that pavement. Whereas if we look at a design that has lower traffic, it's still a rigid or concrete design, then the future rehabilitation costs matter more. If we go to a flexible state highway design, you can see that that was the example that I already showed, where the initial costs are more just what I showed, that they're smaller than the rehabilitation costs. Whereas if we look at an interstate, then those initial costs dominate a bit more. So the point here is there's no like single right or wrong answer. It just depends on many different factors. And that's why when people ask, what's better, concrete or asphalt, we're always going to say it depends, because it depends on many of these factors that I mentioned up here. What's the location, traffic level, pavement design, among many other things. The other thing that we find is that, this life cycle perspective can alter what we call the relative competitiveness, like basically what's the lower cost option. So here's two pavement designs where you can compare the initial cost, and so we have A and B here. In this case, B, there's a 17% difference between the two, but when we include those life cycle costs, they're basically about the same, right? So if you're making decisions just based on that initial cost, when you take that life cycle perspective, it could really change which one becomes preferred. I think when it comes to doing life cycle cost analyses, I mentioned the importance of the pavement designs and maintenance and rehabilitation costs. Another big challenge, though, is determining what are the inputs that you're going to use for the cost side. And just to show you how challenging that can be, you can see there's significant variation in these initial construction costs. What this is showing right here is 12 months of bid data from the Caltrans database right here. So we have the unit price of concrete here in dollars per cubic yard, and this is showing how frequent you see a particular cost in that data throughout the year. So we clearly have about a median of about $160 per cubic yard, but there's some that goes down below 100, and a few of these data points that are way above 500, right? So obviously, as every job is different. There can be different reasons. Who knows? There was something specific about these things right here that made them really expensive. But it's important for us to understand what is driving the variation in these costs. And so one of the things, that's where, coming back to the statistical models, like the ones that we use for competition, it's important for us to try to capture those drivers of initial cost and variation. And so what we did here is I took all that same data, and now I have the prices here. It's the log of the unit prices, so we can get this line right here. And then, but now I'm plotting them against the quantity used in the project, and it's also a log because we know that gives us this nice line. But clearly what you see is that what probably all of you know, you get lower prices here for projects that use more material. And once again, I don't think that's a big surprise to anyone, but it's often something that's not included in those life cycle cost analyses. And just like I showed before, there are other factors. If we knew, we could do statistical models of how costs vary by region, or maybe by season, particularly in a place like North Dakota, the paving conditions are going to vary depending on the season. So those are all things that we can capture. The other thing is that doing these probabilistic analyses can really provide insight on the relative risks. And what I mean by that, this is not the risk of the project failing or something like that. It's the risk of exceeding a particular cost. And that may be particularly important to some decision makers. So this chart right here is going to be what we call a cumulative distribution plot. And the way that you read it is, so once again, going back to my A and B alternatives, this shows basically the probability of a cumulative probability of achieving a particular life cycle cost. So what I would say is that, for example, there's a 50% chance of hitting this cost of about $2.5 million, meaning it's 50%, it could be higher, and 50% it could be lower. For this other alternative right here, you can see that 50% number is about $2.75 million, but it has a different curve. And the reason this matters is that, like, for example, if we compared the means or the average, there's about 8 different percent between the two alternatives. But if we said instead, we're going to take what we call like a 90th percentile number, meaning that I have 90% confidence that the cost will not exceed this number, then we get a 15% difference. And so there are different things about this A and B, probably future material costs or timing of the projects that would lend one to have different amounts of uncertainty. So it could be, if you just make a decision based on initial cost, you're not really capturing what's the relative risks associated with these. Another way you can use this is basically to say, I don't want to exceed, I really don't want to exceed this budget of $3 million. You could say, well, for alternative B, there's a 10% chance of exceeding that, whereas for alternative A, it's a 30% chance of exceeding that. Now, out of all the LCCAs that we've done, we have a good understanding of what the major drivers are in these. And it's usually initial costs, meaning that there's all kinds of factors we take into uncertainty, but having a better understanding of what that initial cost is likely to be, that's what's really going to drive that uncertainty. And so it's a key input factor. And even though we get a lot of guidance from FHWA on how to do an LCCA, they really don't provide a lot of information on how to properly capture that uncertainty, particularly when it comes to inputs. So, all right. Last topic here is asset management, and that may mean many different things to different people. For us right now, the assets represent all the different pavement lane miles in a pavement network. And FHWA has relatively recently issued some new performance management rules due to the MAP 21 legislation, which is moving ahead for progress in the 21st century. And a big motivation was to try and improve decision making through what they call performance-based planning and programming. And they had a couple key elements they really wanted to see on asset management plans from the state. How are you dealing with life cycle planning, risk management analysis, and what kind of financial plan are you making? and that'll lead me to expand a little bit on this performance-based planning. The way that this performance management process usually works is that states will set targets for their pavement network. What's the percentage of good pavements in your network? What's the percentage of poor pavements in your network? Then they will measure the performance of all those pavements, driving around with vehicles to measure roughness and cracking and things like that. That information then goes into the pavement management system. And then there has to be, a decision about which strategies to implement in order to meet the targets that have been set. But of course, there's a question about which strategies should you use and what should the cost be. And so basically what we want to understand is, how should we allocate the funds that we have to obtain the best performance at the lowest cost? And this gets back to that theme that I mentioned about trying to, how do you do more with less? How do you get the most bang for your buck? And of course, there's many different approaches to allocate funds. This chart here is showing for a range of different pavement segments that have been ordered from lowest to highest according to the pavement condition index. If this is this is a sort of my made up pavement network, I have some decisions. How do I prioritize which of these segments I'm going to repair? How do I know if I'm going to meet my targets? Which strategies should be used? Should I use many different short-term fixes so I can spread my funds across all of these? Or should I do a few long-term fixes on the worst ones? And this sort of strategy component can be difficult. And so usually what you use is an optimization modeling approach. And that's the performance-based planning that I mentioned. Developing and deciding which strategies you're going to use in order to meet targets. That's what performance-based planning is. So our research, is to try to improve those allocation decisions as a part of this performance-based planning. And the way that it's usually done is that you start with current and historical pavement network data. So if I understand the current condition of my network and I know how it's been deteriorating in the past, I can use that to then develop models to project what would happen to it in the future. What would happen if I didn't do anything? What would happen if I did treatment A versus treatment B? And then I can use that in some modeling approaches to make decisions on how to allocate resources. And so once again, we want to prioritize projects that maximize our performance, but minimize costs because we don't have infinite budget. So this is a challenge for a few different reasons. First of all, the scale of the problem for state pavement network is daunting. There are many different decisions to be made. Which activity do you do? Preservation activity, which are just sort of minor maintenance, overlays, which might be more about like minor rehabilitation, or a major reconstruction or major rehabilitation. So there's all different kind of options. I have many different segments, it could be a mile or a couple miles of pavement. And when do I do it? Do I do it now or do I wait? And so the budget allocation process is how do I allocate a limited set of funds to a certain set of activities that meet my goals, okay? And this is even more of a challenge because there are just thousands of pavement lane miles. There are many different technologies that can be used. I have a fixed budget, and I don't exactly know what the future condition is going to be and how much budget I'm going to have. And so developing the best plan is a bit complicated. So we overcome this in our modeling approach by doing two interlinked tasks. One is what we call the segment level decision, and it's kind of like doing a whole bunch of life cycle cost analyses for each segment or lane mile of pavement. And what's the best preservation, overlay, or reconstruction strategy? And that can include not just one today, but it can include a sequence of them in the future. Then once we've made decisions on that for all the pavements in the network, then we say, okay, given all the funds that we have, which of these should I actually implement to give me the best network performance while still staying within my budget? And so the way it works is, like I said, let's say you take a pavement network, here showing some roads in Iowa where we've had some data, and then we get data from the pavement management system, current and historical pavement network data. We use that to develop models to project how pavements are likely to deteriorate in the future. And then from that, for each segment, we determine what are some of the best preservation, overlay, or reconstruction alternatives. And we do that for all the segments in the network. And then we put all those into our allocation algorithm to determine what's the best set of options across the whole network. So let me give you an example of how this is worked out for us using some models. This is showing the Iowa US route system. So just the US routes within the network, okay? And this is a pavement management system data for them from 2017, about 10,000 lane miles. Obviously a whole bunch of different types of pavement types, asphalt, concrete, and overlays. And what you can see is this is showing the roughness distribution. So from green is low roughness to red is high. And this is showing in Iowa, they use a pavement condition index here, where red is bad or low PCI and green is high, okay? And then what we do is, because we have this modeling platform, we can play around with some sort of what if strategies. We can look at, what if we just use asphalt treatment technologies or concrete or both? We can also look at different types of treatment types, whether it be preservation, overlay, or reconstruction. And sometimes you'll hear me in a little bit talk about short-term strategies, which are just preservations and thin overlays, whereas long-term strategies are thick overlays and reconstructions. And then the other thing that we do is, within those analyses, we look at different segment analysis periods. So, like, for example, usually in determining what's best for each segment, a lot of times people will just look like 5 years into the future, which of course doesn't really comprehend enough of what's going to happen to the pavement and its deterioration. So we also look at a longer evaluation period of 10 years. So short term versus long term. Another thing that we account for in our models is quantifying the excess fuel consumption of vehicles caused by pavement design and maintenance. And so we're basically capturing pavement vehicle interaction. And there's two mechanisms that we're capturing. One is pavement deflection, and this mostly applies to really heavy trucks, which create basically a very small indentation in the pavement such that the vehicle is driving up like a very shallow hill. So the stiffer the pavement is, the less pavement deflection matters. The other one is pavement roughness, and this has to do with the shock absorber system of the vehicle. The bumpier it is, the more energy dissipation there is in the shocks of the vehicle, and the more energy that then has to be overcome for that, right? And so there's fuel that's consumed with that. So smoother pavements lower this excess fuel consumption. And I use the word excess fuel consumption because what we're quantifying here is the additional amount or excess amount of fuel that must be consumed to overcome this. So if a vehicle were driving on a perfectly smooth and perfectly rigid pavement, there would be zero excess fuel consumption, even though it's going forward. So what we do in our models is we quantify that amount of deflection and roughness, and then calculate that excess fuel consumption. And then from that, we can calculate additional costs due to excess fuel consumption, and then also environmental impacts, either greenhouse gases or smog pollutants as well. So for right now, we've just been incorporating this pavement roughness. So when you see me in a little bit show greenhouse gas emissions due to the pavement network, it's mostly from this excess fuel consumption. Okay, now that we have that modeling part out of the way, let me tell you about what are the key conclusions that we found, and then I'll show you some results in order to demonstrate that. So we basically, it's important in this performance-based planning and asset management to leverage 4 strategies. One is having sufficient budget. Maybe this isn't a big surprise, but the more money that you have, the better performance that you can get in your network. But 2, it's important to have a mix of pavement types, and I'll demonstrate a little bit why you don't just want to be using concrete or asphalt, but a mixture of both. Similarly, we want to have a mix of short and long-term fixes. You'll see that even though we can address more pavements if we just use short-term fixes, in the end, the deterioration would still be such that we'd have poor network performance. And lastly, we want to have long evaluation periods. A longer-term perspective means that we can better capture the benefits of those. So let me get into these one by one. First, sufficient budget. So as I mentioned, increasing the budget level improves network performance and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So what this is showing right here is that basically the annual mean, this is a traffic weighted pavement condition index. And so this is basically the measure of network performance. So we want a higher number to represent our overall network health. And this is the projection into the future. And so these different lines right here are showing different budget levels. So for a low budget level, you can see it sort of can maintain the pavement condition, but eventually it's just going to keep getting worse and worse. Whereas if you have a medium, it stays pretty flat. Whereas with the high level, you can definitely maintain it and even improve it a little bit. Similarly, when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions over that 20-year time horizon, you can see that the more money you spend leads to lower overall emissions. And that's because you can maintain a smoother pavement network, and that leads to lower excess fuel consumption from the vehicles. Next, if we look at that mixture of pavement types, so what we looked at is first of all an asphalt only strategy, and then a concrete or Portland cement concrete only strategy. Under the asphalt only strategy, that means we tell the model you can only use asphalt technologies in order to improve the pavement in the future. They're relatively less expensive on initial costs. You can maintain more pavement area, but the treatment effects don't really last as long. By contrast, if you just do concrete pavements, they have a higher initial construction cost, but the treatment effects are longer. But because they're more expensive, you can maintain less pavement area. So this once again is that traffic weighted PCI right here. Now this x-axis here is showing for different budget levels to kind of reinforce that point that for more budget, annual budget, you get more benefit. And what this is showing right here, if you the orange and blue are the asphalt or concrete only strategies, whereas you see consistently, regardless of the budget, you get better performance if you're using both that mixture of asphalt and concrete. And similarly, when it comes to the average annual GHG emissions, now we want this to be a lower number is good, lower emissions. And once again, that's where you see the mixture, both the asphalt and concrete, is good. Now let's talk about that mix of fixes. We're going to look at both. I mentioned the short-term strategy, which, as you may remember, was just preservation treatments and thin overlays, whereas the long-term strategy was thick overlays and reconstruction. Once again, on the short-term strategy, if you can maintain more pavement area, but the treatment effects are short. Whereas in the long-term strategy, the treatment effects are long, but you can maintain less pavement area. And so once again, when you use that mix of fixes, regardless of what the budget level is, you get the best performance. And of course, as you invest more, the network performance is going to go up. And similarly with the greenhouse gas emissions, here now where we want lower numbers is better. We see that with that mix of fixes, then you get much better results, lower annual greenhouse gas emissions. Now, moving on to the evaluation period, where, as I mentioned, this is kind of like when you do your life cycle cost analysis for each segment in the network. Do you do a 5-year analysis period or a 10-year analysis period? We call this the segment analysis period. And so under the 5-year analysis period, it ends up preferring short-term treatments, whereas if you go to a 10-year one, you're able to really look at those costs and benefits of longer-term treatments. So that's what ends up being used more. So once again, on the traffic weighted, this is now traffic weighted IRI, because this result shows up a little bit better with this metric. So now we want a lower number here. We can see that with that longer term perspective, the SAP of 10, we get better results. And no big surprise that that's also tied here to these annual greenhouse gas emissions as well. Lower results are better. So once again, to summarize, when it comes to this asset management, we've shown these quantitative results that say it's really important to make sure you have sufficient budget, to have a mix of pavement types, a mix of short and long-term fixes, and longer evaluation periods. And part of the way that I think about this mix of fixes, it's also just like you want diversification in your stock portfolio, you want diversification in your assets. And I mentioned how we account for uncertainty in many of these things. It just means that when prices in one material are relatively high, it's easy to then pivot and transition to another material. And so that diversification based on the uncertainty over time really helps. But the benefits of all these things then increase with higher budgets. So looking to the future of asset management, data analysis is really a big thing. DOTs have always been tracking data. FHWA is asking them to be more rigorous about reporting it. And thanks to that, we have quite a bit of data that we can analyze, but we found that this data analysis can be really challenging. And this right here is showing normalized roughness, or that International Roughness Index, on a whole bunch of different segments in from one state's data. And so what we've done is that for each segment, we kind of normalized its IRI to 100 for the beginning, right after a treatment was done to it. So one line in here means right after this treatment was done, we then track that pavement's performance into the future, okay? We did that for all of them because we wanted to make sure we were capturing performance kind of in a similar time. What you can see is that for a whole bunch of the pavement segments, the data that we're getting from the DOT is that many of them are sort of magically, their performance is getting better. And by the way, this is without any treatments that have been done. And so this says either they are able to magically get better, or there's like some uncertainty or measurement error. And so one of the things that's hard to figure out is what's the signal versus noise when it comes to measuring roughness. And we honestly don't know that, and I think it's something that we need to try to address a bit more when it comes to asset management. So one of the things that we've done in the hub is take a lot of that research we did on pavement vehicle interaction and then put it into an app that you can use on your phone called Carbon, C-A-R-B-I-N. And you can get this in both the Android and Apple App Store. And the way it works is that you mount your phone in your car just as you normally would, on a holder or just on the dashboard or center console. And what it does then, as you drive, it's measuring the vibrations in the vehicle using the accelerometers. Then that data, when you get back from where you're driving, or if you're in a remote place, which I know you can be in North Dakota, it'll transmit it when you get back to Wi-Fi, to servers. Some calculations are done. And then we can then measure what that roughness was and also what the excess fuel consumption was. And this is a way to crowdsource roughness measurements from people's phones. And because of that, we've been able to, track a whole bunch of data. As you can see, across over 150,000 miles in 28 countries and over 10 million data points. And we have it all here on this website where you can play around with it and see what kind of data you have, see what the measurements have shown so far. And I think one of the fascinating parts about this and the way that it can possibly transform asset management is because now, DOTs, it's obviously it's expensive to measure roughness, and oftentimes they're lucky if they can measure roughness once a year. Now we can measure it all the time, whether people are doing it or we've put this technology in concrete mixers so that companies are doing it. It can be put in just about any vehicle that's driven, whether it's using a phone or actually if the vehicle has telematics system. And so there's lots of opportunities to do that. And then hopefully, as you saw, we can use that data to then make better projections about the performance of pavements into the future and get a better understanding of how the network could perform over time. So with that, I will close, and we have a whole bunch more information that's available on our website, and you're more than welcome to follow up, contact us via email, and Art, if there's time, I'd be glad to answer any questions that folks may have.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jeremy. We do have a few questions that did come in.
Great.
During your first part of your presentation, you showed some sections of the U.S. Where you did some different analysis, and you had I believe Colorado was a dry freeze, and different areas. One of the questions is, what would you recommend, or what for North Dakota specifically, what area, what part of the analysis would we fall into there as you divide?
Yeah, exactly. North Dakota is almost certainly a dry freeze as well. Of course, it is kind of in that area right in the middle, but it's basically the more wet freeze is areas. The dry versus wet is purely based on annual precipitation, right? So it's not totally dry in Colorado or Arizona. It just has to do with that annual precipitation level. So I would have to check, but I'm pretty sure that North Dakota would be in that dry freeze, and as we know, it definitely freezes there. So yeah, that would be my likely guess there.
Okay. Another question that came in, and this maybe goes to some of the local politics in North Dakota. One of the biggest complaints is because of our seasonality, a lot of our roads are seasonally restricted, reducing the carrying capacity, and obviously that has impacts to commerce and business. And so, our DOT director has been on record as saying that, the only way to do that, to get rid of them is to build stronger pavements. And obviously, that's going to take a while, but that is a goal of ours. But one of the questions that came in is, how do you think truck weight enforcement, or do you think truck weight enforcement should be part of the equation to help reduce that life cycle cost assessment, due to the fact overloaded trucks cause an increase, with all the
Sure.
deterioration of the pavement. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're doing a life cycle cost analysis, there's some element of trying to predict the future, right? And I don't think that probably anyone doing life cycle cost analyses, 20, 30 years ago would have predicted sort of the energy boom that we've seen in the Midwest, and of course the impact that's had on the vehicles driving on pavements. And so I hesitate to say, we can perfectly predict those things. What I would say is that what's important to do is to account for some level of uncertainty, and that can include the amount of truck traffic you're getting and the weights on those trucks. And the reason that I think that's important is because then it allows you to say, well, kind of like, how robust a design do I have? And I'm using robust there to mean considering that there is uncertainty in the design conditions in this case, how many trucks are going to be driving on the road, and and what's the traffic levels, then, or sorry, what's the weight of those trucks, what kind of a design do we have? And so I think that's probably the most important thing to be including in those LCCAs, just explicitly accounting for that uncertainty and then seeing what kind of results that you get. So that would be the biggest thing that I would recommend, is not be afraid of uncertainty, but rather embrace it, and then feel more confident in the results that you get. We see a similar thing when it comes to talking about resilience. And I realize in North Dakota, maybe you're not dealing with as many hurricanes or forest fires, but it's the same concept, right? We don't know exactly what the weather is going to be in the future, but we know that we're going to have, you certainly will see some flooding conditions, right? And so how much flooding is there going to be? We don't know, but we want to have a design that's ready for that. And let's account for the fact that we don't exactly know, and then make sure we're confident in the type of design that we have.
Okay. The follow-up on the road restrictions, since we're still on that, the second part of the question was, how can users be educated on the costs of infrastructure if maybe local officials aren't as keen as enforcing those restrictions and that reduced capacity or the reduced service life? How'd you educate users on what they're really doing to those roadways?
Yeah, I think that's it's a tough question, and a lot of times when it comes to infrastructure, there's a big debate among a lot of people of how much like direct-to-consumer marketing should we be doing. But I think that even if we don't have to educate every single person, there will be a significant extent of the population who is interested and will think it's important. For that segment, though, we just have to put it in language that they can understand. And going back to the resilience examples, what we've done when it comes to resilience is try to put it to talk about costs of resilience in the same way that we now have labels on, for example, appliances or vehicles about costs that happen in the future. And so what I mean by that, when it comes to appliances, for example, you don't just know the initial cost of a refrigerator. There's a label on there that tells you how much is this going to cost going in, to operate based on electricity consumption. Similarly, now when you buy a vehicle, it doesn't just say here's the initial cost, here's how much you're going to spend on gas each year. So there are ways, based using all the same approaches that I did in this life cycle cost analysis, we can estimate essentially either the user costs associated with a pavement, meaning like how much fuel consumption would there be, or traffic delays as well. So how much will people, the taxpayers, pay based on that pavement design? We can absolutely just put that in, sort of dollars per year or dollars for a community. And so I think those are the types of metrics that would be meaningful. They don't even need to know exactly what the pavement design is. You can just say, sort of, here's your default pavement design and how much it will likely cost each person. And then here's a more robust or more resilient design, and here would be the cost to you for that.
Okay, great. We're going to switch gears here. We probably have time for one more question, but as we were preparing for this, I was very happy to see that you put the carbon information in there. I think that's a very valuable resource that your organization has come up with. I certainly try to use it when I'm traveling around North Dakota. I think when I look on the map, I can tell my trips because I'm one of very few users that are using it. So hopefully after today, we can get some more data going into it. But question is, how accurate is carbon? Can you talk a little bit about the accuracy and then maybe expand upon the fact that, your phone or whatever metrics you're using, you want to make sure that you have it, really nice and tightly locked into your vehicle for, to help with that accuracy. Maybe dig into that just a little bit more when we have.
I gotta admit, that part of the research isn't my part. I'm more on this economic and environmental aspects, but my colleagues who do it, they knew that people like me were going to be skeptical, and as a consequence, they put a lot of time into demonstrating its accuracy, and I have to say I've been really impressed. And on our website, you can find a lot in that section on carbon. They've done tests on roads where they've compared it specifically with more traditional roughness measurements, and it's really spot on. And what's remarkable to me about that is, as you said, this even accounts for the fact that although you do want to try to keep the phone sort of in one place, it actually doesn't have to be that perfect. Part of the algorithm is figuring out how much of the vibration is probably just due to phone positioning compared to how much is due to what's going on with the vehicle. And of course, the other great thing is that when you're crowdsourcing this data, you don't need any one single drive to be perfect, right? You're trying to get that data from many different people, and that allows you to then get a better sense, like I said before, what's the signal versus what's the noise. So that's the great thing. If you screw up on one drive, you forget, you pick up the phone or whatever, it's not the end of the world, right? Because there's going to be other vehicles that are going through taking that same measurement. But to kind of go back to your original question, it's remarkable to me, really how accurate it's been.
Okay, and again, for those that are on this call and watching, I mean, if you could take a few minutes, download Carbon. It is a very simple app to use as you're traveling across the state, or maybe you have a fleet of vehicles. Educate your drivers and your users to open up that app. If you're limited on data, like as Jeremy said, it will store it, and when you get back to Wi-Fi, it will update. Really, really great tool, and I would certainly really like to have more of our pavements and routes in North Dakota added to this resource. With that, Dr. Gregory, I think that's all the questions that we will take on the live basis. Certainly, if people have more questions, they can type them in, and we will follow up offline. Dr. Gregory, it's always great to have you, and really appreciate the research that you and your team are doing at the CSHub. Again, for those people that haven't spent time on much time looking for resources, I would encourage you to go to cshub.mit.edu. There is a wealth of information out there, not just on pavements, that's what we're talking about today, but also on concrete structures. Dr. Gregory, once again, thank you for being here this afternoon. Very much enjoyed having you.
It was my pleasure, Art. Thanks very much.
Sounds great. Well, we are going to move on to our next topic here, and we spent, the better part of yesterday and some of today learning about pavement design software and design sustainability and resilient pavements and overlays for urban areas, and now most recently with managing our pavement systems. Our final topic, we want to turn it over to Dan Rozycki, the president of the Transtec group, about the future of highways. Dan is going to look at some myths and truths about how technology will drive the future of pavement design and construction techniques to meet the transportation needs of the future. As mentioned, Dan is president of the Transtec group. For those of you unfamiliar with them, that's the pavement engineering firm that brought you Hyperpave, ProVal, Compass, mixed design software, 25 years of pavement research for the FHWA, and over $60 billion of design, build, and P3 highway projects throughout the world. Certainly a tremendous resume, and you can read that on the screen. Dan is a civil engineer from the University of Texas at Austin, and we are certainly very, very pleased to have him talk to us about the future of highways. So with that, I will turn it over to Dan Rozycki.
Thank you very much, Art. Good afternoon. Man, Jeremy did an excellent presentation, which is extremely relevant as we think about, let me get this started. There we go. Which is extremely relevant as we think about just how technology is shaping the way that we use roadways and the way we design and build roadways. And that's what this presentation is about. I'm going to do my best in 60 minutes or less to really kind of show you just a quick snapshot of so many things that are going on, of the way that technology is really changing our industry. I mean, and that, as I started to see that happening, I just took a personal interest in trying to get ahead of this and trying to understand what are all the different ways that technology is going to affect your job and my job. And that's kind of how this presentation came about. So as Art mentioned, let's start with just a couple of myths and truths about how all this new technology is changing pavement design and construction. A lot of you have probably heard about all these Google type companies and Uber and Lyft that are, working on like a fully driverless downtown taxi. Well, the truth is it's a bit of a myth, because what they are finding is they like a lot of things that I've read, what they are saying they can do about 95% of the circumstances that they need to be able to have a truly driverless downtown taxi. But that last 5% in terms of safety and really understanding just all the different conditions, it's just not possible. And they just haven't been able to quite crack the code entirely. So downtown driverless cars, the truth is it's just too complicated. It might be here someday, but not nearly as quickly as all the marketing and buzz claims. What is coming and is less marketing and is more real is driverless trucks on the highway. Because if you think about it, that's a simpler problem to solve, because you've got fewer inputs in terms of no pedestrians, no traffic lights. It's more of a controlled access system. And so that's something that's actually happening now. And there's companies like Auto and Starsky Robotics that are actually testing. And Too Simple is a big one. They're testing fully driverless 18-wheelers on the highway right now. Another myth number 2 is, Uber claimed that in 2020 we were going to see these giant drones that carried passengers that they were calling air taxis were going to start. They were actually going to be flying those in Dallas in 2020. Well, that never happened, because same story, like they claim that they can get it all figured out, but they just haven't been able to solve such an incredibly complicated equation. And they lost so much money on it that at the end of last year, Uber actually finally sold off that whole division of Uber because it was just losing too much money. So they sold it off for, I think, like $75 million to a company called Joby. And Joby has now said, yes, it's still going to happen, but maybe not till 2023. So I'm not going to hold my breath. Myth number 3 is, so many of us think like all this crazy Jetson stuff that people are marketing and advertising, it's not really going to happen. And you have a point that fully driverless cars are still a long ways off. I mean, at least, maybe 20 years or more before we can really solve that problem. But there is a lot of crazy stuff that is already happening today, and I'm going to try to show you a lot of it as quickly as I can. And here's the first one. Company is called Tortoise. Do you see this? Look at this. This is ridiculous. This is a driverless scooter. I don't even understand what this is for. And who needs this? Now, the Tortoise company claims that you need this because the problem that they think they're solving is that driverless scooters, scooters are currently littering the sidewalks of downtown areas where there's a whole bunch of scooters out. And so what this will enable you to do is you'll use your smartphone to call the scooter, and the scooter will come to you. And that way we won't have quite as much scooter trash all over the streets. Now, if you think that's ridiculous, I agree with you. But you and I are wrong, because not only has Tortoise been able to raise tens of millions of dollars to develop the driverless scooter, Lyft and Bird and Waymo have also invested tens of millions of dollars each to develop this. This is a real thing that people are really working on. And so my point is, it's this kind of new technology that is coming to our industry is important to you and me, because just look back over the history and we have seen how technology has really redefined so many industries. I mean, remember newspapers? Remember when radio DJs used to be live? Retail is shrinking and shopping malls are becoming Amazon distribution centers. I mean, the list goes on and on. If you look at all the different industries that have just been completely transformed by the advent of technology. I mean, I could go through the list here. I mean, you know, we don't buy music very much anymore. There's streaming services, and so bands now have to go on tour. They can't sell albums anymore. And I mean, just the list goes on and on. I mean, even you know, rural activities of farming and ranching, you know, that is such a small percentage of our workforce compared to what it used to be. And the list goes on with drones and 3D printing, and libraries are now all online, and self-checkout at the grocery store. And so my point is, there's so much going on that's affecting you and me, that it's important for us to get ahead of it. And so here's just some quick samples of some of the hundreds of things that are already happening today that are not the future, they are the present, that directly affect our jobs. So Nexar, for example, is a company that sells dash cams, just regular dash cams that, you know, that taxi drivers or even regular civilians like you and me will have on the front that are, you know, shooting video out the front of the car or sometimes out the back. But what's unique is Nexar is collecting all that video. And they're harvesting all that video and GPS and information. They're selling all your information to governments and companies. So, you know, over time, is that going to change demand planning and traffic engineering? So that's one. So the Carbon app that Dr. Gregory was showing is crowdsourcing, and there's other applications of that kind of technology. So Robotics is a company that is doing total pavement management with the smartphone on your dashboard, and using the camera on your smartphone to collect information, and they have over 100 cities doing pavement management, and so the question is, could that change pavement smoothness standards? Built Robotics is selling autonomous construction equipment, and I'll show you some of that later. So that is fully autonomous, real construction equipment. Meanwhile, driverless cars could eliminate the need for parking lots and highway lanes. So that could change the way we do pavement design and construction. Google already has more road data than most state DOTs. That's kind of a major thing to kind of process and think about how that's going to affect. Companies like Waze and Virginia DOT have partnered together, and they have snowplow-based live monitoring of roads, and it just goes on and on. The newest, craziest thing is this idea of $0 economy. So the idea here is your car generates a lot of data. And we are almost to the point where it's going to be easy for you, if you want, to sell that data to marketing companies and to the Googles who want to buy that data so that they can understand how you use your car and how people, the behavior patterns of drivers. And the idea is, if you could sell the data from your car, you could eventually pay for your car. So your car becomes $0, and that's what they mean by $0 economy. But the old adage to remember, and Art and I were talking about this earlier, is if your product is free, like if you're not paying for a product, then that means you're the product. And that is just something to kind of keep in mind. But how are all these things going to change the way you and I work and the way DOTs operate? You know, for the past 5 years at all these different industry events that I've been going to and learning about all this, you keep hearing the same 3 lines over and over. The future is electric, the future is autonomous, and data is the new oil. And I am generally a skeptical person, but I'm starting to see that they may have a point. All right, so here's the outline of this presentation. All these different things that could directly impact your job. So I'm going to show you a whole bunch of crazy new technologies that are coming to roadways, and then we'll talk about something that's a little bit more directly applicable. We'll look at automation in highway construction, and then we'll look at what changes are coming to pavement design and pavement construction. All right, so part 1, new technology for roadways. So about 25, actually it's up to over 30 states now that have some kind of program in the deployment of all this new technology for different kinds of highway activities. So 30 to 35 different states are doing some sort of program now at looking at all this new technology. And here's one example. So this is Drive Ohio. So Drive Ohio is run by Ohio DOT, but it's not funded by Ohio DOT. It is really just sort of like this umbrella organization that tries to be the information hub of all these different programs happening throughout Ohio, including smart corridors that counties are running or universities are doing. And so they all kind of work together and they sort of share their information with Drive Ohio. And there's about 14 different projects within the Drive Ohio umbrella that are happening now. And it's everything from using drones to having sensors on highways to vehicles that are talking to cell towers to smart traffic lights that are, have cameras and sensors that are watching everything. And so it's there's a lot of states that have sort of different levels of what they're doing. And what they're really all getting to is could roads with proper sensors and technology start doing things like generating their own energy, or could roads start assessing themselves or do their own pavement management, or even repair themselves? And the reality is, yeah, a lot of these roads really are already starting to do that. And so I'm going to show you some of these now. Okay, so this is the Ray. The Ray is a test section on I-85 in Georgia. And the Wattway company has glued solar panels onto the rest area. Wattway has also done this in France. So that's another example. And this is solar panels right onto a rest area. Solar Roads is a company in Idaho. It's this husband-wife company in Idaho where they've done lots of different ways of building these solar panels that you could drive on. Caltrans looked into it, but Caltrans decided against it. Another major company is called Solar Roads out of the Netherlands, and this is one of their test sections that they've built. So the people who like the idea of solar panels on pavement say that we're generating free energy, and it takes, they estimate, about 220 square feet of solar panel to power one house. So, that could generate a lot of free energy. The critics say it's that the cost doesn't work out, the return on investment doesn't work. And when you drive 18-wheelers on these panels, they don't last very long. So, and then there's also just the issues of texture and friction. So what is becoming more realistic is maybe we could do solar panels in parking areas, maybe on shoulders, but probably not main lanes. So that's one idea. So the Ray, this organization, this test section in Georgia, is this big nonprofit, and they've got about 14 of these different, or 12 of these different projects that they're running right now. So it's not just solar panels on pavement. The Ray is also testing out fancy road striping that can talk to driverless vehicles. They're looking into things that are more for climate, and then they have these fancy weigh and motion devices that actually check the tires as you drive across the device for the texture to make sure that your tread is thick enough, and it can also measure tire pressure. So there's just a lot of new technologies that the Ray as an organization is working on. All right, here's another big one. This is, it's called dynamic electric vehicle charging, but this is recharging your Tesla as it drives down the highway. So this is equipment built by Qualcomm. You're looking at a test section in France. It's embedded in the roadway, and then you drive over it, and through induction, it recharges the batteries in your car. There are test sections in Israel and Sweden, and actually the Illinois Tollway Authority looked into doing this as like a whole new way of collecting toll revenue, but they couldn't get the return on investment the math to work out. And so people who like this idea say, just imagine if you could just drive your Tesla over DEVC, then you could have, it goes forever. Like imagine these driverless electric cars that never even need to be recharged. But skeptics say that this is not such a smart idea because you're installing this in the pavement. So it's expensive to install, it's expensive to maintain. How are you going to maintain the pavement around it? And, batteries on Teslas and other electric vehicles, the range is getting better and better. So it may not be all that necessary. Now, the most realistic idea of this is maybe like a downtown circulator bus, kind of, like a small shuttle bus that's downtown. As it circulates around, if it could recharge, that could be possibly have like a positive ROI. Now, as far as electrification of roads go, this is the organization that is leading the way in the United States and most of the world. It's at Utah State University, and it's an organization called Aspire. And they just got a $50 million grant from the Department of Energy to really start electrifying roads. And so they are leading the nation at developing these ideas and looking into real applications for state DOTs. Here's another way of doing free energy. This is a video from a company called InnoWattTech out of Israel. And about 10 years ago, they built a test section where you put these little blocks or piezoelectric crystals. And when you squeeze them, it makes a voltage that turns into electricity, right? So if you drive over thousands of these, and the cars are squeezing them that are in the pavement, then you can create enough electricity to either store on the roadside or push it back into the grid or use it to light the highway at night. And so this is real test sections that they've built, and these are actually working properly. And so in the city of Merced, California, they built a test section to try this out. And in San Antonio, Texas, working with Texas Department of Transportation and the University of Texas San Antonio, they're building test sections to evaluate this right now as well. So embedded sensors, there are hundreds and hundreds of kinds of different embedded sensors that people are developing now because technology is pretty cheap. So, so the one on the left is called ePave. It was developed by the University of Buffalo and a university in China. And this little sensor has one of those piezoelectric crystals in it. So every time you drive over this sensor, it recharges the sensor, so it can last, indefinitely. And the sensor measures temperature and humidity and pressure and stress, and all that feeds into software. And so if you've got temperature, humidity, pressure, and stress in a pavement, you can then use that to predict potholes and cracks before they happen. So that's what that sensor does. It predicts potholes and cracks before they happen, which is pretty cool. The sensor on the right is already commercially available. It's by HiCob, and it functions to measure surface temperature. And then it also has a 3-axis sort of magnetic field to be able to count cars or watch traffic or alert the authorities if a vehicle leaves the roadway under like icy conditions. And so, and that lasts about 5 years, and it's battery powered. And then this is like the newest sensor that's out. This is from a company out of Israel called Valoran. So this sensor looks, it's kind of like a light can in a runway. And as you see here, it is wireless, so it talks to cell towers. It lights up, so you could use it to direct traffic. And it's solar powered, so it can last, indefinitely. And so it is used, and they already have installations of it in other countries, not in the US yet, but in other countries it's been installed to alert drivers if there's a hazard, or change traffic flow, or alert drivers if there's, icy road conditions, that sort of thing. And so, so far this one is actually doing really well. So a huge segment of all this new technology is what people refer to as V to X. So that means vehicle, and the X stands for everything. And so you see on this graph or on this chart, V to V means vehicle to vehicle, V to P, vehicle to pedestrian, and so forth. And so this is sort of the next big wave of all vehicles communicating, not only vehicles talking to each other, but if you could talk to a person's cell phone, you could alert them if you're approaching a crosswalk. If you're talking to a cell tower, if cars are talking to cell towers, they could start providing like traffic information and traffic congestion information. And then vehicle to infrastructure is like talking to traffic signals. And so that could, you could optimize the traffic signals to improve traffic flow. And so if you think about it, that can really provide a new safety benefits that are already starting to be implemented and tested out. And so imagine if the cars are talking to each other, you could have like do not pass warnings. You could alert a car if there's a blind curve and there's a car stuck on the other side of that curve. You could alert cars about work zones that are up ahead, or help with intersection movements, or if there's a person or a bicycle in a crosswalk up ahead, or left turns. So there's just a lot of information and a lot of safety features that we could do with V2X. And so V2X can improve traffic flow and safety, and change the way we do lane markings and joint patterns. Roadside units are these little boxes that you stick into the side of the road that are sort of a major component of V2X, and they're referred to as DSRC, which is dedicated short range communication. And it helps the cars talk to each other and talk to the cloud. And new cars are already doing this. New cars are already sending data to cell towers, and that goes to the manufacturers right now. But that data could soon, instead of going to manufacturers, could start going to other databases. And that data is called basic safety messaging. And that basic safety messaging is generally about 138 kinds of information that go from the car to the cloud 10 times a second. And so right now, if you've got like a 2018 or newer vehicle, the car manufacturer is capturing all this information from your car passively without your knowing it. And it's everything from, is your turn signal on? Are you depressing your brake? What is the accelerometer in your car saying that you're going uphill or downhill or sliding? It's just a lot of information. And then we are able to send information back to the car through what's called traffic information management data. And so companies are starting to use this the BSM data with connected vehicles, and we're starting to develop these crowdsourced pavement conditions, and so that can affect the way we measure smoothness or potholes or friction. So V2X, huge field. You could also imagine using it for driverless truck platooning. We can use it to, so adaptive cruise control is available on new cars. Cooperative adaptive cruise control is where the cars talk to each other. And so that's coming, and V2X is going to enable that. Imagine if you had cars talking to each other and talking to the cloud, you wouldn't need toll gantries anymore on toll roads. That's what people call like a digital wallet. And then all that could ultimately change the way that we pay for roads. And if you think this is crazy, there are well over 40 million cars on the road today in the US that are already sending data to the cloud. And they estimate that, within 10 years, the majority of cars on the road are gonna have this capability. All right, other things that are going on. In Finland, a company called Vaisala has already built a real-time pavement management system that doesn't use any of those fancy million-dollar vans that you hear companies are using for like automated distress data collection that state DOTs use. So they don't use any of those vans. They just have sensors and cameras set up in key locations. That black hockey puck you see on your screen is a sensor that's embedded in the roadway for measuring information. And then this company, Vaisala, cut a deal with the postal service of the nation of Finland, basically the USPS of Finland, and they've strapped cameras and sensors onto every delivery truck. So instead of having these million-dollar vans, they've got a $50 pack of sensors and cameras on every truck that is collecting all this data in real time. And Vaisala claims that all this constantly feeds into what they claim to be an artificial intelligent system that they have that's doing real live pavement management in real time, which is pretty amazing. Back at MIT, as Dr. Gregory was talking about, there's another program at MIT called the Sensible City Lab, and they have one project called City Scanner. And for all the trash trucks in the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, they strap some sensors and some cameras on, and now those trash trucks are basically reporting data live in real time as they drive around and pick up trash. And it's everything from temperature and moisture to air quality. They also have accelerometers on them where they are able to measure road smoothness. And so every time there's a pothole or a major bump that accelerometer picks up, it automatically reports it to the Department of Public Works, and then they can go out and check it and fill potholes instantly. And all of that data is free, live, real time on this web page that you see the example of the screenshot that I've got here. So that's what Cambridge, Massachusetts is doing. So that's another use of new technology. Here's a company called iCone that is selling work zone products like cones and barriers and stop signs, and they're all connected to the cloud. And so the purpose of this is by having work zones that are connected to the cloud, by having work zones that are connected to the cloud, you can have devices that could actually send data to connected cars. So imagine, your backup camera screen or your data screen or your infotainment screen that's in the middle of your dashboard console in your car, that could light up and alert you that there's a work zone coming. Also, the same devices could also alert workers. So you could put a cone or you see that construction zone pin, you could put that far out at the leading edge of the work zone. And if a car crosses into that, it could sound an alarm or a siren that alerts everybody in the work zone that a car has breached that work zone. So it could really improve safety for work zone. 3M has been selling for quite some time now these machine readable highway signs. So this is a highway sign that in daytime you see what it looks like on the left, but what a connected vehicle or a driverless car with the right sensor sees is the image on the right, which is, so it's infrared ink that is printed onto that work sign. So the car, instead of reading road work ahead, is actually reading that two-dimensional barcode, which is giving the car far more information. So it could do things like wrong way driving detection. It could do things like tell the car about upcoming work zones or other information or lane changes or narrowing lanes, any of that kind of information. All right, here's one that's a little more crazy. So we've all seen drones. That's not new. And drones are starting to fly over traffic. That used to be a thing that was prohibitive, but now it can. So here's a drone that flies over traffic, looks for cracks, and seals them. Now, if that's bananas to you, it is bananas, because I don't think the researchers really considered the idea of 18-wheelers in traffic. I think 18-wheeler versus drone, the drone's not going to win. But this is a real thing. People are actually using drones for all sorts of things. There are other companies that are actively using drones for pavement management, where they're flying over roadways. They have really high-resolution LiDAR and high-resolution cameras, and they're able to identify small cracks and use that to develop maintenance plans. And they're also able to use it for pavement management systems. Here's another one. This is glow-in-the-dark striping. So there's an engineer named Dan Rozengaard in the Netherlands who several years ago conceived of the idea of why can't photoluminescent powder in with thermoplast and be able to create glow-in-the-dark stripes. And so he's developed that, and they have some real test sections, as you see here, and it works. And so they're now starting to develop this technology and roll it out for other things. And so there's a university in Mexico that is developed, and now I think Cemex is starting to sell glow-in-the-dark cement. There's other people that are developing glow-in-the-dark aggregates that you can embed into lane stripes to make glow-in-the-dark striping materials. So that's becoming popular throughout Europe. There's a lot of new research for coming up with the de-icing of pavement to come up with ways to do it more effectively and less expensively. So the University of New York in Binghamton has done a geothermal experiment. So they're drawing water from a nearby lake, and they've made this underlayment under the pavement. And they have found that it's been very inexpensive and very effective as a way of being able to, basically run warm water through the tubes in a geothermal application to de-ice pavement. Item B that you see there is a new product from a company called SafeLane, where they have embedded brine into a top coat of aggregate that they claim sort of works for 7 seasons. That it'll thaw the ice using the brine. And then our friends at Iowa State University, the Concrete Pavement Technology Center, they have come up with a way of actually running electric lines to just heat the pavement using electricity, and they've shown some real success with that. And they actually got profiled on the Today Show recently. All right, so of all the new technologies, this one is the kookiest, but it's a real thing. Glow-in-the-dark trees. I hear you. I mean, I can't actually hear you, but I agree with you. So scientists, researchers at MIT identified luciferase, which is the enzyme that makes fireflies glow. And they've realized that they can shove it into leaves of trees and make the whole tree glow in the dark, and will light our road at night for $0 by glow-in-the-dark trees. They claim that they've already got trees glowing up to 4 hours per day, and that they're optimizing it, and they're pretty close to reaching 8 hours per day, which is ridiculous. But and if you think that this is not a real thing, there are independent, unrelated research projects doing the exact same thing in Denmark and Israel right now, where they're trying to make glow-in-the-dark trees. And the one thing that I have not found is, do they understand the difference between evergreen and deciduous trees? Because I don't understand how this works in the winter, but that's what they're doing. All right, so that is a quick snapshot of a whole bunch of different technologies that are coming to roadways. And the thing that they all have in common is, you and I are not developing these things. It is Google and Tesla and Uber and Silicon Valley and all these crazy new technology, high-tech companies have now infiltrated. I mean, the same way that they've infiltrated all these other industries, like newspapers and retail and all of that, they are now in our industry. And what I don't see is, they don't really know transportation needs the way we do. They know technology. So transportation needs are our expertise, and we need to be more involved. And what I keep hoping for is some sort of federal highway, ACPA, NAPA joint program to work with the tech companies so that the technologies that are steering us in that direction will be the technologies that are most useful and relevant for us, that meet the long-term needs of transportation that we need. All right, we're moving on to part 2. What's new in automated construction equipment? Okay, so hang on just a second. Let me correct one quick thing. All right, hang on. Okay, let me show you some things that are new in automated construction equipment. So there was a great report that the Federal Highway Administration put out a couple years ago that actually has a really great summary of all different things that are new in highway construction. Art is going to make a copy of this presentation available to you later. If you're not able to write this down, write down the report number, you can ask me, or I can get you a copy of the report. But it's really good about lots of new things that are coming in terms of automation for highway construction. Here's kind of an overview, or a graphical overview of what that report covers. So it's everything from the planning stage all the way through survey and design and construction and maintenance. And so in planning, there's 3D laser and LiDAR that are using, and we're using drones now for planning to do remote sensing. And then in the surveying, there's so much new developments in 3D modeling and mapping that's happening. Also, three-dimensional design is happening, and I'll show you some examples of some of that here in a minute. And then machine control, as you likely know, is just becoming more and more prevalent, and automation is getting more and more advanced. And then in inspection, there's intelligent construction, intelligent compaction, and just lots of new technologies that are coming to pavements for automation. And so we talked to some of the biggest companies in highway construction and asked them sort of what is some of the newest advances that they see happening for automated construction. And these are some of the examples they gave. But I want to show you kind of the newest one that I saw. So sit back, relax. This is a company called Built Robotics. They are not surprisingly out of California, and they are fully autonomizing construction equipment. So take a look at this. All right, cool, but terrifying. They are currently selling their construction equipment mostly for contractors on wind farms. This is a testimonial from their website. And as you see, I mean, I'll read a little bit of it. Built Autonomous Dozer is the real deal. They've already finished hundreds of pads, and the pads are for these wind turbine farms that this contractor is building. And he refers to it as, our skilled operators do the complex stuff, and the Built Robotics is fully autonomous, doing what he describes as the more mundane work. So this is not the future. This is actual autonomous construction equipment that's happening now. So then I called Gunnar Zimmerman, talked to Rolf before he left, and talked to Ron. And these are some of the newest things that G&Z is kind of working on. And for them, they're really focusing on trying to make their equipment as adaptable as possible. So using the same tractor for both the paver and the belt placer, for example. They're also seeing that skilled labor shortage. They're developing better sensors and more sensors so that paver adjustments will be more automated and easier to control. And then they said that they're continuing to use telematics to keep enhancing software and diagnostics. And so a quick refresher, telematics is not new. That's been around for a while. That's using GPS and and sensors to make improvements of the performance and operation of equipment for all these different benefits for assets and reducing theft and those kinds of things. So that's not new, but they believe that there's still a lot of room for advancement by enhancing the software that runs the telematics that they have. So I talked to Kevin Klein at Gomeco, and he said kind of the newest thing coming out of Gomeco is the Navigator software that controls all the accessories on the paver. And now, as you see in that red arrow in the image, it's all on an easy touchscreen that's at ground level. So no matter where you are, you can make adjustments to paver performance and make configuration changes for tie bar inserters and transition adjusters. And they say that what's also great about it is that it's all retrofittable to existing accessories that you might have. We also talked to Wirtgen, and Tim Nash explained how Autopilot 2.0 is the newest thing that they have for stringless and for optimizing profiles, because it's one tablet that you can take from the pole straight to the paver, and it'll make 3D models now instantly, or you can import 3D models that you already have, and it works with all the existing equipment. The other thing that Wirtgen had is a new rear lift, for the start-stop of the paver to reduce that bump that happens. And so the operator can now program that in so that as the paver comes to a stop, the rear mold can adjust a little bit and try to reduce the bump that often happens. And then we talked to Trimble, and I'll show you two videos that they sent me. So Sight Vision is full-on augmented reality. So remember the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality. Virtual reality is, everything you see is an animation. Augmented reality is actual, is the video or the image in front of you with graphics overlaid on top of, the real image. And so I'll show you an example of that. So they've got Sight Vision has come up with some pretty cool new advancements, and so they sent me this video using a testimonial from Cold Spring Construction. They're out of New York, and they're a ACPA member. So here's the video.
But this is the first opportunity that we've had to use the Trimble Catalyst with the Google software. And what it enables us to do is to go out and look at the design to be constructed, overlaid on the actual site conditions in real time. The ability to actually visualize what's going to be constructed before it happens is an enormous advantage.
Pretty cool. So that's augmented reality, where you have, the graphical image is overlaid, looking right through the camera of what's actually out there. Here's a second video from Trimble. It's pretty cool. Pretty interesting stuff. So that's pretty wild. All right, things that are coming in paving equipment. Real-time profilers, not new, but we're finding more and more state DOTs starting to embrace and accept real-time profiler equipment, and that technology keeps advancing as well. And as we saw, machine guidance is becoming more and more popular. Augmented reality, as we just saw, is now coming to paving equipment. And then not only the autonomous construction that you saw from Built Robotics, but also crash trucks are becoming a more routine thing in certain states for having autonomous features on them. Trends we see in paving materials of things that are coming. So Iowa State University is leading the charge on performance engineered mixtures, and they've just published a beautiful publication on that that's got a lot of great guidance, and so state DOTs are embracing that, so that's becoming more widely accepted. Of course, recycle and reclaim materials is increasing in popularity. Embedded sensors, as we already talked about. Changing work zones to be able to understand connected vehicles and eventually autonomous vehicles. That is a hot topic with a lot of state DOTs. And of course, resilient pavements, right? So sustainable pavements, but also resilient pavements that can weather major climatic events and be able to keep moisture out of pavements, whether it's massive flooding or coastal hurricanes, things like that. And then just more real-time and remote indicators during construction. These are all the hot topics that we keep seeing that state DOTs are interested in pursuing and advancing, which is great. So in conclusion, so we see a lot of new tech that is going to change the way we pavement engineers and contractors are working in the field, and so what we see from all that is, our DOTs partnering enough with contractors and even with the engineering firms to work together to work through these changes together to ensure that as they adopt these new things, it is in concert with contractor needs and contractor abilities. So I think there's area for improvement in that. All right, last section of our presentation. So we talked about crazy new technology that's coming to roadways. We looked at new technology that is coming to equipment and paving. But let's look at the specifics of how paving design and how pavement construction could really change in the future. So this is a press release that just came out last week. So this is brand new. So Ferrovial is a gigantic engineering firm that is owned by Cintra. Cintra, you might know, is that big Spanish company that operates toll roads throughout the US. They've got toll roads in Virginia and Indiana and Texas, and they see all this new technology coming, right? So Cintra is a giant multi-billion-dollar legacy corporation that sees all this new technology coming, and they see that it's being driven by the Googles and the Ubers and the Teslas, and they're trying to get involved. So they've made this big announcement that they're going to start creating the toll roads of the future by partnering, and you see that first bullet there, with Microsoft, with 3M, and Capsch. Capsch is one of those roadside units. They're a manufacturer of roadside units, like I talked about earlier in the presentation. And so they are going to work together to try developing these concepts of what the roads of the future could be. And so you see there in their other bullets, open solutions for connected corridors, whatever the heck that means, and safety and mobility to make roads better. So they're trying to get on board, but they're not the only one. This is the competitor to Cintra. You don't hear about them as often because they don't do quite as much work in the US, but they are active in Canada and Europe. They're called Vinci, and they're out of France. So they're basically like Cintra and Ferrovial, but they're from France. Vinci has a program called Leonard, and Leonard, which I'm guessing is a play on Leonard da Vinci or Leonardo da Vinci. So Leonard is the same kind of program where they're developing these concepts of the roads of the future to try to get ahead of all this technology and help state DOTs sort of conceive of what these roads could look like if you start to incorporate all these new technologies that I showed you earlier in this presentation. All right, but here's the last one that I want to show you now. I got to switch screens a little bit, so bear with me. Hang on. Okay. Let's see. I don't know, that did not work. Let me try it a different way. Give me just a second. Okay, all right. So this is a company called Cavnu, and this is their homepage, and the animation is why I'm switching so that you can see the animation. So what Cavnu wants to do is similar to what Cintra and Vinci are talking about, where they're gonna develop these roads of the future. But Cavnu is not an engineering company and not a contractor and not a construction company. Cavnu is a company wholly owned by Google. So this is Google in the highway business. This is Google jumping the fence and getting into your industry very directly. They want to become the new toll road operator. They want to become the new concessionaire. And so this video, we'll show it one more time and I'll walk you through kind of what they're doing. They're saying, take your traditional highway with too much congestion and let's replace the middle lane with like a fully autonomous lane in each direction that talks to cell towers, and you've got driverless 18-wheelers and driverless cars, and even if your car is not driverless, you'll merge into the driverless lane, take your hands off the wheel, and it will become driverless, and we'll develop that technology. And then in the downtown urban area, we'll have driverless shuttles that'll work on these lanes. And so Google's plan is that they want to provide all this technology. They want to get in the highway business and build all this high-tech roadway, and that is the direction they're trying to go. Let me switch back to the presentation, and so there we go. So that is what Google is trying to do, and what's crazy about all this is they think that the way that they're going to generate revenue is not just from collecting tolls. They want to get in this business because they see billions of dollars in being able to generate revenue off all this data. Like these lanes could have could recharge your electric vehicle as they drive across it, and they could charge you money for that. Or these lanes could send advertisements to the data screen, to the that infotainment screen in the middle of your console, and they'll generate revenue that way. Or they'll put ads in those driverless shuttle vehicles, and they'll generate revenue that way. So Google is very much interested in getting into the highway business. And I'm sorry, one last important thing, they're already doing it. So Google just a month ago signed a contract with the Michigan DOT that they are going to study for the next 2 years a stretch of Interstate 40 in Michigan. And if they think that this concept that I just showed you in the video is a viable alternative for Interstate 40, they're going to build it. And they did not have to, they cut this deal with the Michigan DOT by offering to do their own study for $0. So the way they're able to get this agreement with Michigan is they offered to do it for no money. So Google is paying their own money to do it. And at the end of 2 years, if Google determines that this could be a positive return on investment, they have full rights to be able to build this on Interstate 40 in Michigan. All right, here's another graphical example of how roads could change in the future. Because if you think about it, if cars are talking to each other, and if cars are talking to the cloud, and if cars are starting to become more driverless, then we may not need as much pavement. I don't like the sound of that, but that's a real thing. We may not need as many lanes. We may not need lane striping. We may not need medians. We may not need traffic lights. We may not need traditional crosswalks. Some people think we may not even need parking lots in the future because, you know, the driverless cars and Ubers and Lyfts, and people aren't going to keep owning vehicles in the future. So this is kind of a quick representation of what the future could look like. And so that's a real consideration. So let's start talking about the specifics of how pavement design and construction could change in the future. So as you think about all these things that we've covered, you know, DOT planning is going to change because these traffic patterns, human needs are changing as cars become more connected and driverless. Also, these big design build projects that happen around the country could actually become more popular because as all this technology is advancing, the DOTs don't have 40 years of historical legacy knowledge of how all this works. They're going to rely more on private sector companies to be able to answer a lot of these questions about how you develop that. And so you see that's what's already happening with Google offering to build a toll road on Interstate 40. Also, as more of these Uber, Lyft, these shared vehicles happen, you're going to have fewer cars that are owned by people, so there'll be less need for parking lots. We may actually have to start creating, like, imagine like a right lane that is just for dropping people off and picking people up for all this Uber and Lyft type vehicles that are becoming more popular. And then geometric roadway design is going to change as well because CAVs will be a lot more precise than human drivers, and we may not even need lane striping as much. And so we'll look at that in just a minute. And then electric cars are becoming more popular, which means we're buying less gas, which means we're generating less gas tax. So how we fund roads of the future is going to have to change. So some specifics that could change pavement design. So driverless 18-wheelers are being tested right now. Driverless cars on highways is a possibility, and that's being tested right now. And so if you imagine if they're driverless, then there's no lane wander anymore, right? That 18-wheeler is computerized, so it's going to be right in the wheel path all the time. And so less lane wander could actually be good for concrete versus asphalt because you've got more, localized impact loading that's happening as you're driving over the same wheel path every time. Narrow lanes also leads to greater impact and greater fatigue on that narrowed pavement. And so that could also be a good argument for concrete over asphalt. As you do these driverless truck platoonings, that will lead to reduced following distance between trucks, which means you have less recovery time from the load, between in the time between trucks or in the headway. And so reduced following distance could also be good for concrete over asphalt. Also, as we move towards driverless trucks, the hours of service is going to lengthen. And so we'll have more trucks moving more hours per day. So there'll be increased nighttime traffic, which is a totally different design for asphalt. And so that could be good for concrete pavement. And then autonomous truck corridors. So this is something, a concept developed by our friend Tyler Lay, who's a professor in Oklahoma, of like, let's have dedicated lanes for driverless electric trucks, whether they're powered overhead or they're just electric trucks that are powered underground. But we could develop these autonomous truck corridors. And if you think about that, that is absolutely a great argument for concrete over asphalt. Other things, embedded sensors, embedded electrification of roads. Some people want to put, like in Colorado, they want to put Wi-Fi in roads, they want to put fiber optics in roads. All of that is a good argument for concrete over asphalt. Also, the increased demand for resilient pavements. As we've well seen, concrete does a much better job of surviving major weather events over asphalt. Something that is changing, but is not necessarily a strength for concrete. If we start to remove signalized intersections, then we may not have the rutting and shoving of asphalt at intersections where we have turning movements and stopping and starting. But that's just a change that could be coming to the way we design and build pavements. And then future work zones, as vehicles are talking to each other, and just the increased need for pavement smoothness, because all of these new technologies can only function on pavements that stay smooth over a long period of time. And so that's a good argument for concrete. Finally, Vision 2040 is a report written by the American Concrete Pavement Association that touches on a lot of these topics. And it's a great report. It's freely available on the ACPA website. I highly recommend it. It's good reading material. So in conclusion, number one, it's not you and me, it's tech companies that are driving the future of this transportation. They don't know long-term transportation needs, we do. So we need to be more involved in that. Number two, tech is also changing these contractor abilities from workforce issues. And so how are we partnering with DOTs to make sure that we're steering this in the right direction? And then three, I think concrete pavements could have a lot of good advantages as we look at how the future of how pavements are going to be designed and built in the future. And so one last summary comment. I think we really need to do our best to work more with these high-tech companies to improve the way highways are built so that we could do that together. And that's a quick summary of what's going on. Thank you very much.
Wow, Dan, you know, you and I talked offline, and I've seen this presentation before, and I wanted to bring it back and show it to our audience here, because a lot of people see these technologies and think that it's many, many years down the road, but as you've shown us, they're in play in multiple locations, some overseas, but they're being tested, and the future is not so far down the road.
Right.
You mentioned some of these technologies are not cost effective right now, but as we know with technology, you know, as it advances, it becomes cheaper. Right. So do you see some of these technologies, or which technology right now do you see that maybe is expensive, that might have the quickest turn on becoming a reality as technology advances and becomes cheaper?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the two that seem to be sort of the lowest hanging fruit are, or maybe three that are kind of the lowest hanging fruit. One is solar panels. So all the people that were very interested in looking at putting solar panels on the roadway, because I think they sort of, at the risk of offending somebody, sort of naively just saw this big open road and thought it's so much square area that we could generate all this free energy. And then they realized it doesn't hold up to 18-wheelers. So, but what they have moved on to is they've come up with really cost-effective ways to put solar panels in the median, or put solar panels on, you know, in the right of way off to the side of the road, in grassy areas, or at like major highway intersections where you have overpasses and a big grassy area. So that is showing a positive return on investment. That's more cost effective. Number two is the V to X stuff, the sensors, the roadside units, and the sensors that you need to get vehicles communicating to each other and communicating to the cloud. That the cost of that is just because all this Internet of Things stuff is, you know, tech is becoming so cheap. They're finding that that's becoming very cost effective, and that is low hanging fruit because, you know, you can outfit a major stretch of highway for like less than $100,000 now and really boost your safety capabilities for that highway. So that's a pretty big one. And then the last one that we're discovering is using those same roadside units. We can now get cars talking to each other to increase the throughput on a toll lane, right? If we have the cars talking to each other a little bit more, we can reduce traffic congestion, get more cars through. And so that becomes a moneymaker for the state. So that's kind of a no-brainer. And so those are kind of the three things that we see that are probably going to be the first things to roll out.
Okay, great, thanks. And we did have a one question come in, and I think it's a good one, and maybe you don't know the answer, or maybe it's something that you know, we could research and get back to the person. But as vehicles become more fuel efficient, and as electric cars become more prevalent, a lot of state DOTs are losing funding due to, you know, reduced gas tax collection. And so the question from our audience is there any technology, or is there merit in developing a technology that would report vehicle road use by ton per mile, for example, as a way to maybe replace the gas tax?
That is a very cool idea. And I can tell you that I have not seen that yet. So, I mean, there's, you know, the most likely alternative, which, you know, so many people bristled about vehicle miles traveled. But that seems, I mean, all the information that we come across kind of points in that direction, that is the most likely place that we're going to go, because it's easy to measure and it's easy to track. But the idea of tons per mile is a pretty smart idea, but I haven't seen anybody develop that yet.
All right. Well, here's a thought. Maybe you and your team could develop that. I would help you market it, and I would be happy to be on the path with you on that one.
I will be emailing you an NDA before the end of this conversation.
Perfect. And then just one last thing. I was really intrigued by the portion of your presentation, actually by all of it, but when you look at how we can improve workplace safety, alerting drivers, and alerting our workforce that's out on the roadways. This is something that's been really important in North Dakota. We've engaged in the Vision Zero program, doing a lot of technology improvements, currently doing some safety corridors in high crash areas. How soon could some of that technology be made available, and how close are we to getting some of that out into the marketplace and making it more common?
Well, within 5 years, because the iCone company is already for sale. I mean, those products. So, I live in Texas, and so I talked to a lot of our friends at Texas DOT, and they were very interested in the iCone products until they found out how expensive they are. But I hope I'm not too offensive to the iCone folks. But what the Texas DOT folks said is they looked at it and they thought, that actually is not that complicated for us to develop internally. And so I think it was more that it gave Texas DOT folks the idea that we could actually start implementing some of these safety measures into our work zones, very soon. I mean, easily within the next 5 years. And then some of these test facilities like the Ray in Georgia, they are working on using roadside units and all this V2X, vehicle to everything communication for work zone safety and to be able to better alert drivers. And so, I mean, 5 years is not an unrealistic estimate.
Great. Just have a couple minutes here left. We've gone through the questions in the queue. Is there anything else that Transtec is working on that maybe, keeping in mind our audience is a lot of consulting engineers, some city, county, and state engineers, some concrete contractors. What are some of the cutting edge things that your group is working on right now that maybe we could benefit from or seek out additional information?
Well, Art, if you're asking for a shameless plug, like I'm on a nighttime talk show, the two most interesting things that we've got are, one, lots of state DOTs are curious about all this fancy new technology, but don't have the budget for it, right? And so what we've been doing is helping state DOTs who don't have the budget, kind of quickly assess, for a lot less money, quickly assess what technologies are kind of lowest hanging fruit. What are the things that are most realistic that they should be implementing? So that's one thing that we've been helping folks with. And then the second one, that's probably the most interesting thing, is we are mostly a pavement engineering company. So we're doing pavement design, pavement research. We also do pavement testing, like falling weight deflectometer stuff. But we also sell a concrete temperature and maturity sensor for either pavement repair or also for non-pavement things, vertical concrete construction. And we just introduced a device that's fully autonomous, so that you never have to be on the construction site anymore to collect your concrete temperature or maturity data. It goes straight from the sensor to the cloud to your laptop or iPhone or whatever you have. And so that's available now, which is pretty neat.
Well, that's great, and it wasn't too I gave you the opportunity, and I'm familiar with you and your group, and really think highly of a lot of the work that you've done, and keeping track on some of these technologies. So I want to express my thank you and our gratitude for you taking an hour to bring us a glimpse at emerging technologies. And certainly I have a feeling that people will be reaching out to you after this event. And with that, we will let you go. But Dan, thank you for a very enlightening past hour. Very, very entertaining, very educational. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity, Art. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Sounds great. Well, we have packed a lot of learning into a couple of afternoons. I hope you found it as informative and as entertaining as I have. We'd just like to highlight that we have a number of continuing education classes and opportunities coming up here in 2021. Our January 2021 e-newsletter has at least 4 pages of continuing education opportunities. You can find that on our website at ndconcrete.com/membership. Click on membership news link to find the archive of those news letters. If you'd like to receive electronic alerts about future events and things that we're doing, and you're not receiving those already, please contact Savannah Schmidt at sschmidt@agcnd.org and just ask her to be added to our email list, and she will certainly do that. Also, would like to make sure that you're following us on social media. Follow us on Facebook at North Dakota Concrete Council and on Twitter at Concrete ND. And of course, you can always check our website at North Dakota Concrete or ndconcrete.com. Okay, so there's many ways to stay informed. Right now, we are going to be transitioning to what is our signature event for our association. This is always a great opportunity where we highlight many different awards in 10 different categories throughout that were constructed over the last 18 months. I want to say congratulations to all of our winners, and we hope that you will enjoy the next presentation coming up where we profile the best of the best and our Gold Star Excellence in Concrete Awards.
Good afternoon once again, and welcome to the 2020 Gold Star Excellence in Concrete Award Program. For those of you just tuning in, I'm Art Thompson, Executive Director of the North Dakota Concrete Council, and I'm pleased to host our annual awards program recognition ceremony today. For the first time in our association's history, we are unable to gather in person to recognize our industry partners who demonstrate a commitment to concrete. This year, we offer our virtual recognition to the promoters, designers, owners, suppliers, contractors, and all who had a hand in earning our association's highest honor. Before we highlight the awards, there are a few other items to cover. First, we would like to recognize our sponsors whose donations help to make this virtual event possible. At our platinum level is Aggregate Industries, Ash Grove Cement, Bartlett & West, Boral Resources, Brett Admixtures, Contech, Dickinson Ready Mix, GCC, Lafarge Wholesome, Lehigh Hanson, JMAC Resources, Master Builders Solutions, Souris Valley Ready Mix, and Strata Corporation. At the gold level, GCP Applied Technologies, Great River Energy, MAPE, McCody, McNeilis Companies, Northern Improvement Company, Paris Contracting, RDO Equipment, and Terracon. We also received in-kind donations from Houston Engineering, KLJ, and Mountain Plains. The following entities provided door prizes for workshop attendees. Traditionally, we sell raffle tickets at our in-person events with the proceeds benefiting our scholarship program. This year, please note a portion of your registration fees will be distributed into that fund. Thank you, Ash Grove Cement, Lafarge Wholesome, Boral Resources, GCC, Lehigh, and the North Dakota Ready Mix and Concrete Products Board of Directors. All attendees over the past 2 days have had their names entered into our prize drawings. Winners will be chosen at random and notified in the coming days. Good luck to all of you. As you may be aware, the North Dakota Concrete Council is the governing board, which consists of the North Dakota Ready Mix and Concrete Products Association and the North Dakota chapter of the American Concrete Pavement Association. Our mission is to promote the effective use of concrete through research, education, and promotion of concrete and its technologies. The Concrete Council is chaired by Greg McCormick, president of Northern Improvement Company. Greg recently ended his term as the 2020 chairman of the American Concrete Pavement Association's National Board of Directors. Congratulations, Greg, on this accomplishment, and thank you for all you do for the concrete industry. The North Dakota Ready Mix and Concrete Products Association is overseen by a board of directors who serve 4-year terms. For 2020, the board president was Casey Shriak, general manager of Concrete Mobile in Minot. For 2021, the board president-elect is Greg Johnson, senior engineer at Terracon Consultants in Fargo. Casey and Greg join us now. Casey?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. 2020 has been one for the books. COVID-19, endless Zoom meetings, negative oil prices, elections, and let's not forget about the Tiger King. Needless to say, it's been an interesting year. But first off, I'd like to thank all the board members for volunteering their time to help grow the association. We've had to adapt to changes in our environment while still finding ways to promote the use of concrete. And we're lucky enough to be in an industry that allowed us to continue building and improving our infrastructure throughout the pandemic. But as we move forward, the need for resilient, sustainable, and green projects will be more important than ever. Together, we've been working hard towards safer building codes with the Build with Strength campaign. Our executive director, Art Thompson, has already been doing a great job at promoting this, as well as the Pave Ahead program that provides free design assistance through the NDRM&CPA. But overall, it's been a fun year. It's been a great experience, and I'm happy to be a part of this association. We appreciate all of you that have supported us throughout the years, and hopefully we can get back to normal this year. When I first started attending seminars and events provided by the association, I quickly learned that it was a great value to anyone that wanted to be a part of it. It has provided many of us with valuable education and networking opportunities. If anyone has a question about concrete, then I can personally guarantee that someone in this association has the answer for you, or will find out for you. And I'm pretty sure that our newly elected president probably has the answer. For those of you who don't know, he's practically a concrete wizard and has already done so much for the association. With that being said, please give a warm welcome to the newly elected president of the North Dakota Ready Mix and Concrete Products Association, Greg Johnson.
Thank you, Casey. It's been an honor working with you as our president here this last year, and I just hope that I can do as good a job as you've done this last year. It's certainly been an interesting year. We have a great association here, lots of interesting stuff going on. You know, concrete's been around for thousands of years, and you'd think we would still be doing innovation with concrete, but we still are, and that's the exciting part of this industry, is we're able to do stuff that we never thought possible 10, 20 years ago even. And, you know, the fascination of the concrete industry and the construction industry, it really hit home with me this last summer when I took my son out to the diversion inlet structure in Fargo. It was a Sunday afternoon. We had to take a look at some temperatures for mass concrete that we were monitoring. And as we were walking into the site, you know, I explained to him, you know, what the project was for and what it would do and what we were doing and that kind of stuff. And as I was downloading some of the data, I looked over and, you know, him just being there wasn't good enough. He pulled the cell phone out of his pocket and started taking pictures. You know, it's just that interesting of an industry, and that's what drew me into it back in 1988 when I ran my first slump test. You know, I've been in it since then because it is just so fascinating. Every day is a different day, every week's a different week. Now this year we have a whole bunch of different challenges with the COVID stuff, and hopefully, you know, we can just keep our economy going and keep everybody working so that we're able to keep producing concrete and making innovations and providing for our communities. That's one of the things I really love about this association too. It's not just about selling another yard of concrete or promoting that another yard of concrete. It's about promoting the success of our communities, the safety of our communities, you know, the build with strength, you know. The biggest thing I think of in concrete safety is I go back to after Hurricane Katrina, and they have that one picture of a house, and there's one house standing there and nothing but leveled ground all around it. And why? Because that's a concrete house that survived Hurricane Katrina. Yeah, it was pretty well gutted, but at least you have something to come back to. I look forward to being your president this next year. It'll be a great honor to help serve you guys with this association. We're going to continue to provide you guys resources, provide educational programs to owners, developers, contractors, engineers, technicians, design professionals, to help work with concrete in the built product. One of the greatest things about concrete is it lasts a long time, and we just poured a building over in Medina where it was rock and mortar. Things go back a long time, and it's still performing. It's holding that school up. So it's there for the long haul. I'm only here for a year. So again, thank you for the honor of being your president this year, and hopefully all of you get to participate in association stuff. We're here for you. If you have any ideas of what you'd like to see the association do, please let myself know or any of the other board members. We want you to be a part of the association, not just a member. We want you involved. We're here for you. We're here with you. Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll have a good 2021. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Casey, for your leadership. It's been a pleasure working with you this year. And Greg, we look forward to working with you in 2021. We also would like to recognize our 2021 board members. Greg Johnson, President. Mason Young, Vice President. Casey Shriak, Past President. Directors, Vince Frost, John Grassel, Bob Horub, John Jund, Ben O'Lean, and Sue Stewart. The full NDRM&CPA Board of Directors and its slate of officers will be featured in our February 2021 e-newsletter. The first awards we would like to announce today are the recipients of the 2021 NDRM&CPA Scholarship Program. Applicants must be juniors, seniors, or graduate students in civil engineering, construction management, architecture, or landscape architecture. They are awarded points on work or internship experience, grade point average, campus activities, industry involvement, and a 4-part written essay. The scholarship committee, chaired by Dan DeShatis of Bread Admixtures, Casey Shriak of Concrete Mobile, Ben O'Lean of Dickinson Ready Mix, and I, reviewed all applications and are proud to present the 3 winners. These students have shown a commitment to educational excellence and the recognition of the importance of concrete in their professional future. Each scholarship recipient will receive $2,000 to use toward their continuing education. This is up from $1,500 given in previous years, thanks to an increase approved this fall by our board of directors. The first recipient is Tyler Berg of West Fargo. Tyler is a 3rd-year civil engineering student at North Dakota State University. Berg has spent the past 3 summers working for Terracon Consultants. He also has worked for Strata Corporation. Berg knows his future will be in either transportation or materials-related fields. Berg wrote on his application, "Most people just think that concrete is concrete, and it's always made the same way, but a lot more goes on behind the scenes than many realize, and that is why the industry is so interesting to me." Congratulations, Tyler. The next recipient is Cameron Dolan, a junior civil engineering major at NDSU. During the summer of 2020, Dolan interned for SRF Consulting Group of Fargo as a construction inspection intern. He is president of NDSU Engineers Without Borders. The Fargo chapter has completed projects in Guatemala villages to improve basic human needs. In his application, Dolan wrote about his summer internship and said, "I have definitely gained an appreciation for not only concrete itself, but all of the jobs and employees that the industry supports." Congratulations, Cameron. Our final recipient is Samuel Larson, a senior civil engineering major at the University of North Dakota. Larson has interned at Otter Tail County Highway Department in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, and at Ackerman Estevold in Minot. He is involved in many activities on the UND campus, including being a peer mentor, treasurer of the student chapter of the American Society of Civil Engineers, a civil engineering lab assistant, and a student ambassador for the College of Engineering and Mines. Upon graduation, Larson intends to work in land development or in a municipal engineering role. The idea of bettering someone else's quality of life or improvement of communities is one of the most important reasons I have chosen the civil engineering path, Larson wrote. I believe the use of an effective material like concrete will play an important part in my future because it is versatile and a long-lasting option for communities. Congratulations, Sam. With the 2021 scholarship awards, the program has given out $111,000 to 91 students since its inception in 1993. Well, and now that I've made you wait long enough, let's take a look at the award-winning projects constructed in North Dakota over the past 18 months. As we were preparing for this year's award program, I was alerted by our resident historian, Scott O'Lean, president and general manager of Dickinson Ready Mix, that this year marks the 40th anniversary of our Gold Star Excellence in Concrete Awards. When the award program was began in 1981, according to Scott, there were only 3 categories and plaques were only given to the project owner and the project's contractor, meaning the ready mix producer did not even receive one. I guess that changed in 1982. In fact, a lot has changed over the years, and we have expanded our awards program and its criteria accordingly. For 2020, 19 projects from across the state were submitted for consideration. An independent judging panel was selected to review all applications and to narrow down the winning entries. Thank you to all who have submitted applications. The competition this year, like every year among the projects nominated, made for lively debates among our judging panel. These projects demonstrate the advantages of concrete: safety, resiliency, durability, environmental stewardship, and aesthetics, to name a few. Now, let's look at these stellar projects. In the airfield category, the winner is Williston Basin International Airport, the XWA terminal located in Williston, North Dakota. The project owner is the City of Williston, the design firms Altag and J.E. Dunn, contractor Wind Construction and Doyle Hughes Construction, the concrete supplier Strata Corporation. The Siouxland Field International Airport has been part of the Williston community for nearly 70 years. During that time, a lot had changed in aviation. Commercial air service activity grew from fewer than 6,000 passengers in 2005 to more than 100,000 passengers in 2015. Security needs became greatly different post 9/11. Safety standards for aircraft operations also evolved. All of these changes led to the construction of the new Williston Basin International Airport, located just north of the city, which was designed to meet the needs of today's and tomorrow's passengers and aircrafts. One of the project's highlights was the construction of the Williston Basin International Airport Terminal. The XWA Terminal project consisted of 11,200 cubic yards of concrete placed over 2 years by 2 contractors. Concrete was used for this project because of its durability, strength, and sustainability. Most of the concrete was used in foundations, retaining walls, and the basement luggage handling facility. The balance of concrete was placed as concrete on deck for the upper stories, as well as exterior paving. In total, 10 unique mix designs were utilized in the construction of this state-of-the-art, secure, and aesthetic structure. Partnering with the State of North Dakota and the Federal Aviation Administration, the City of Williston now has an airport that is flexible, sized appropriately, and efficient to serve the air traffic needs of the city and region well into the future. Accepting the award on behalf of the project is Rob Richter from Strata Corporation.
On behalf of Strata Corporation, I'd like to thank the North Dakota Ready Mix Association for choosing the XWA Terminal project as an outstanding project for 2020. It is great to be part of such an important project for the City of Williston and the Bakken region. Working together with Doyle Hughes Construction and Wind Construction, the terminal construction went very smoothly.
Thank you, Rob, and well deserved. If you haven't had the chance to check out this project, be sure to do so. The facility is well designed and a statement piece for anyone traveling into and out of western North Dakota. In the bridge water feature category, the winner is the Long X Bridge replacement located in western North Dakota on US Highway 85. The project owner is the North Dakota Department of Transportation, the design firm AECON. The contractors, Ames Construction and Malcolm Drilling. The concrete supplier, Strata Corporation. Highway 85 is a main traffic route for the energy, agriculture, and tourism industries in western North Dakota. Due to increasing traffic volumes and rising repair costs of a 60-year-old truss-style bridge along the route, the North Dakota Department of Transportation decided it was time to replace the bridge. This project, located in the north unit of the Theodore Roosevelt National Park, included a complete bridge replacement, highway construction, and the addition of a wildlife crossing built under Highway 85 just south of the bridge. The new bridge is a concrete girder bridge and has 4 12-foot driving lanes with a median in the center. The new bridge will accommodate larger, wider truck loads than were previously capable on the old bridge. The state of North Dakota invested $37.4 million to transform the Long X Bridge into a safe and accessible passageway, said NDDOT Director Bill Panos. U.S. Highway 85 and this bridge are essential to the transportation movement in western North Dakota. Construction of the bridge took more than 8,000 cubic yards of concrete and just over 1 year to complete. Accepting the award on behalf of the project, once again, here is Rob Richter from Strata.
I'd like to thank the North Dakota Ready Mix Association for choosing the Long X Bridge as an outstanding project for 2020. It was an interesting project to be a part of, from the large diameter drilled shaft requiring 250 yards each with a minimum slump of 8 inches maintained for 6 hours, to the decorative piers, to the three large deck pours. The project posed a few challenges, but working together with Ames and AECon, we were able to complete this vital piece of infrastructure on time.
Approximately 4,200 vehicles travel daily over the bridge, which is located about 15 miles south of Watford City. It's not too often you see tower cranes working on projects in North Dakota, where we tend to build out, not up. But our next award-winning project needed not 1, but 2 320-foot tower cranes to aid in construction. This project definitely changed the skyline of downtown Fargo. Our 2020 commercial category project winner is Block 9. The owners of the project are Block 9 partners. The design and engineering firm was SOM, the contractor McGow, the concrete supplier Aggregate Industries, other contributors Seco, Sowells, and Braun Intertech. Block 9 consists of an 18-story, 230-foot tall mixed-use building, 8-story parking garage, and plaza. The building itself is nearly 284,000 square feet, consisting of 1 level of parking below grade. Levels 1 through 5 are the new corporate headquarters for the RDO Offutt companies, and the main lobby, restaurant, and ballroom for the 4-star Jasper Hotel. Levels 6 through 8 are leasable office space. Levels 9 through 14 contain 126 hotel rooms. 6 condos will be built on levels 15 through 17, and floor 18 is the mechanical penthouse. The building is a combination of structural concrete and structural steel. The exterior is a mixture of precast concrete elements and glazing. The building sits on 285 18-inch auger cast pile drilled 95 feet below grade. The superstructure of the taller tower is all concrete. The adjacent parking ramp is an 8-story, 350-stall precast concrete structure. To tell us more about the project and to accept the award, here is Bruce Johnson from Aggregate Industries.
Thank you, Art. I hope this finds everybody healthy and well here for the new year. I'm looking forward to 2021. As everybody knows, 2020 was quite a challenging year for everybody. And with that being said, on behalf of McGough, the general contractor for the Block 9 project, SOM, the design firm for the project, Seco, a subcontractor, and Sowells, a subcontractor, and Aggregate Industries, I would like to thank the Ready Mix Association for picking this award, and we're very greatly honored to accept the award. Thank you. Construction of the building started in the September of 2018, with construction wrapping up December of 2020. Concrete placement started in October of 18 and continued nonstop until November 14th of 2019, when the building topped out. Exceptional cold weather concrete practice had to be put in place to support the winter concrete construction in 2019. To ensure that ACI 306R temperatures were maintained, McGough tracked temperatures 24 hours a day during the heart of the winter by utilizing thermal couplers placed by the testing agency. A 7-day work week was maintained for the majority of the concrete work done in 2019, during which an average of 12-day cycle per floor were achieved. Construction was aided by 2 Liebherr 316 tower cranes, which stood at 320 feet. Above level 4, the concrete was pumped up to a 38-meter self-climbing placing boom. Due to the schedule and logistics of the project, no space was left for laydown. The project utilized just-in-time deliveries and off-site storage to meet these challenges. In total, over 73,000 man-hours were used for the cast-in-place concrete for the building. Thank you.
And that's quite an impressive structure. Congratulations to all involved with the Block 9 project. I hope, as you can see so far, it takes a lot to win a Gold Star Award. The projects must rise above the ordinary, and competition each year is very tough. That's what makes our next winner so unique. For the 3rd consecutive year, the Decorative Concrete Gold Star Award is being given to Kaufman Construction. The award-winning project is the Voss Residence located in Castleton. The project owners are Tanya and Nick Voss, the contractor Kaufman Construction, the concrete supplier Aggregate Industries. Kaufman Construction had done prior work for the Vosses, so when they had a new home built, they reached out to Brian for help and ideas on their outdoor living area. Kaufman then turned a hand-sketched drawing into their reality. Here to tell us more about all the work that went into this project and to accept the award, please welcome again Bruce Johnson from Aggregate Industries.
Again, on behalf of Aggregate Industries, Kaufman Construction, I'd like to thank the North Dakota Ready Mix Association for choosing this award. It's a real unique home project that Kaufman had put a lot of time and energy into, and it turned out pretty neat. The final product is a 1,000 square foot sand finish pool deck, a 1,500 square foot stamped concrete patio, fire pit, and concrete seat wall, and also an outdoor kitchen. The customers wanted everything to be made out of concrete and not landscaping blocks. The first part of the project was completed around the pool, incorporating a non-slip yet decorative surface. Kaufman chose to go with a colored and exposed aggregate sand finish with different color bands in the concrete. This provided functionality, durability, and decorative look to the pool area. The second portion of the project was the fire pit, seat wall, and decorative columns. This look was achieved by using Butterfield ledgestone form liners along with multiple different colors of stains and dyes and color hardeners. The next step was the 1,500 square foot patio area. It's the outdoor living space. The customers wanted some different stamping patterns and colors used to differentiate the areas. This portion was done in 4 different pours, utilizing 3 different patterns and multiple colors. The final part of this project was the outdoor kitchen area. 10 cubic yards of concrete were used to produce an amazing bar and kitchen. Every aspect of the bar is cast in place, with decorative concrete. Form liners were used to create the brick look, and the countertops were cast in place. All this was done using integrally colored concrete, and this portion took 4 different pours. All the vertical concrete stones were hand colored using various stains and dyes. Benefits of using concrete: the customers actually came to Kaufman's and wanted a product that would last longer than landscape blocks and paver stones with little maintenance. So the use of the concrete provides them with a peace of mind that they will have many years of low maintenance and very low likelihood of deterioration of the concrete versus blocks and pavers. Again, thank you for the award.
No, I've had the privilege of getting to know Brian over the years and as he's accepted these awards. And I can say that he is very competitive when it comes to this category, and I would bet he's already thinking about what he can do to elevate himself to try for a four-peat. Congratulations once again. Our next award is in the education category, and the project selected is the St. Mary's Central School in Bismarck. The project owners, Light of Christ Schools, the design firm ASTRM Minneapolis, CW Structural, the contractor Northwest Contracting, the concrete supplier was Strata Corporation. In 1878, the first St. Mary's Academy in Bismarck, Dakota Territory was created. The St. Mary's Academy first offered high school classes in 1916. The first all-high school campus was built in 1951 and received additions in 1989 and 1997. However, with a growing city and no room to expand, a new, much larger facility was needed. The state-of-the-art St. Mary's Central High School was created and wowed the public with its elegance and professionalism. The 150,000 square foot facility features 4 centers: the St. Thomas Aquinas Academic Center, an athletic center, the Myron Atkinson and T. Clem Casey Fine Arts Center, and Our Lady of Victory Chapel. The school has an open design that brings a collegiate feel. It was designed for a rising attendance capacity of 525 students, with currently 355 students enrolled. The school features exceptional finishes on everything, including its concrete. More than 6,000 cubic yards of concrete were placed as part of the project. Accepting the award on behalf of the project team, here's Clint Phelan from Strata Corporation.
Well, we want to thank the association for this award. This project created a new landmark. We always appreciate working with Northwest Contracting, and we thank them for allowing us to work with them on this project. Tom, Eric, Greg, and Raylan are always a pleasure to work with, as well as the rest of their crew. Northwest is truly a leader in the construction industry, and they have been very eager to embrace all the new innovations and advancements that have been provided to the industry, which sometimes is a tough sell to others. So we always appreciate that. Also want to thank Chris Wentz with CW Structural. We're fortunate to have a company like CW right in our community and appreciate their guidance. And in closing, we would like to congratulate the Light of Christ Catholic Schools on an absolutely, truly magnificent new St. Mary's High campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Clint. The students and staff now have a place to call their own and can definitely be proud to represent. Congratulations once again to all involved with the St. Mary's Central School. Our 2020 Governmental Category Award-winning project is a unique and perhaps first in the state example of a public-private partnership between the City of West Fargo and Epic Companies. The project we are recognizing is the Lights in West Fargo. The project owner, the City of West Fargo and Epic Companies. The design firm Icon Architecture Group, the engineering firm Higher Engineering, contractors were Quality Concrete and Gertz Construction Services. The concrete supplier Coast Materials, with contributors Mapei Admixtures, Central Plains Sugar Creek Cement, and Terracon. The goal of the Lights was to create a type of neighborhood that would generate activity with public amenities. The complex was designed with something for everyone to enjoy, while also creating a tax base to assist with funding the city, school district, Parks and Recreation, and Cass County through property and other taxable activities. After 4 years of discussion and planning, this area was officially defined as an entertainment district in February 2020. Having this designation enables the area to include additional amenities as well as house community events, to sponsor retail, office, recreation, entertainment, and living space areas. All of the concrete infrastructure, roads, and amenities were placed by Quality Concrete and produced by Coast Materials, encompassing over 5,000 cubic yards. Accepting the award on behalf of the project is Dave Grausom of Coast Materials.
Thanks to the committee for recognizing the works at the Lights Project in West Fargo. The Lights Project is a continuing effort in the Fargo area to create and redefine in the housing, entertainment, office space, and retail sectors. When the City of West Fargo Planning and Zoning Department designated the area to be in the entertainment district, it was said to be the first of its kind in the state of North Dakota. The outdoor facility has already produced several events, and the skating rink has been enjoyed by many area teams along with many area people. Winning this award could not be possible without the efforts of Quality Concrete, who placed over 5,000 cubic yards of concrete, which included the full range of mixes from footings and walls to the colored concrete in the 2 large circular sections that highlight the outdoor area. Also to be recognized is the engineering team at the City of West Fargo and the group at Enclave Companies for their collaboration to get the project to the community of West Fargo. Thanks again for the recognition, and look forward to building and sustaining concrete in the upcoming year. Thanks again.
Thank you, Dave. To learn more about the project and to view a calendar of upcoming events, visit thelightswf.com. That's thelightswf.com. Outdoor recreational activities and trails are becoming a more and more important component to a vibrant community. The planning and forward thinking that goes into the design and construction of trail systems is why our association honors projects in the multi-use path category. This year's award-winning project is the West I-94 Business Loop pedestrian bridge located in Dickinson. The project owner is the North Dakota Department of Transportation, the engineering firm Civil Science, the prime contractor Industrial Builders, the subcontractor Wind Construction, and the concrete supplier Dickinson Ready Mix. Before construction of the West I-94 Business Loop pedestrian bridge, there was not a safe way for pedestrians to cross I-94 unless they chose an alternate route more than a mile away. The construction of the new pedestrian bridge completes the connection between the existing shared-use path to the north and south of I-94, giving residents the opportunity for a brisk walk, jog, or bike ride on over 9 miles of trails around the perimeter of Dickinson. The project consisted of constructing a 10-foot wide shared-use path, nearly 2,500 feet in length, and a 2-span pre-stressed concrete I-beam bridge across I-94 with an overall length of more than 260 feet. Some decorative elements used to enhance the aesthetics of this project were a ribbed, cast-in-place center concrete pier. The bridge's exterior walls include a stamped pattern with a 2-inch recessed area throughout the length of the bridge. The lighting is black, vintage, ornamental light standards that match the bridge railing. Finally, a raised concrete median at Fairway Street utilized a stamped and colored brick pattern. Accepting the award on behalf of the project is Ben O'Lean from Dickinson Ready Mix.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the association and its board of directors for this prestigious award. It's always a joy to make projects like this a big success. I would thank the members of the DOT that we've worked with, Dennis Yugi, Jason Fisher, and Rob Rayhorn. Also like to thank Aaron and Chad from Industrial Builders, all the members of the Wind crew that made this project a big success, and Civil Science for understanding the necessity to make this project a success. Projects like this are always fun to be a part of just because it ties the whole community together. This was an interesting project going right over the 94 business loop and over the interstate there. Thank you.
One other interesting note about the project is how concrete helps to increase the safety factor. The reflectivity of concrete compared to other paving materials plays a big role in the brightness and visibility on the trail after dark, resulting in a safe and secure trail for anyone who uses it. Our next award is the parking lot category. This year's winning entry comes from Fargo and serves the business needs of trucking firm E.W. Wiley. The project owner is E.W. Wiley, the design firm Enclave Companies, the engineering firm Houston Engineering, the contractor All Finish Concrete, the concrete supplier Coast Materials with help from MIT Admixtures, Lehigh Cement, and Terracon. The North Fargo Industrial Tract received a new addition to the area with the construction of E.W. Wiley's new corporate terminal. The collaboration of Enclave Companies, Houston Engineering, and E.W. Wiley designed a parking area that could handle the large volume of trucks coming and going daily from this new terminal. A detailed expansion joint pattern guides truck drivers around the yard and helps with loading operations. The owner wanted the most durable concrete option for the parking lot with an expected service life of up to 40 years. A sustainable 4,000 psi exterior concrete mix was designed by Terracon to meet these specifications. Concrete contractor All Finish Concrete poured the 7-inch concrete parking lot, which covered more than 300,000 square feet. The concrete has ample traction, is easy to plow in the winter, and is relatively low maintenance. The exterior package consumed 7,200 cubic yards of concrete produced by Coast Materials. Here to accept the award and to talk a bit more about the project, once again is Dave Grausam from Coast.
Thanks again, Art. Coast Materials is extremely grateful to be receiving the Gold Star Award for the parking lot division. And thanks again to the committee for recognizing all the work done at the E.W. Wiley terminal in the North Fargo Industrial Park. E.W. Wiley project was a combined effort from the group at E.W. Wiley and Enclave Companies to come up with a durable life cycle parking lot that could handle the large volume of trucks and low capacities that occur at their new terminal. The group designed a 7-inch concrete paving parking lot with a detailed square expansion jointing to help guide the truckers into their parking spots and backing along the straight lines into their designated spots. All finished concrete placed and poured over 7,200 cubic yards of concrete on the project with a vigorous pour schedule that included 15-day period and 3 pours over 1,000 cubic yards daily. Also to be recognized with this project are the suppliers from Central Plains Cement, MIT Admixtures, Boral Construction Materials, and Terracon. Thanks again for the recognition by the committee and to all the members for doing their part to making concrete all a part of their communities. Thanks again.
The 15-day pour schedule required Coast to utilize 2 ready-mix plants and its team of concrete delivery professionals to meet the hourly cubic yardage demands of All Finish's paving crew. Our next category is street paving, and this year's Gold Star Award-winning project is Main Avenue, University Drive to 2nd Street in Fargo. The project owner is the NDDOT and the City of Fargo. The design firms SRF Consulting Group, Apex Engineering Group, the contractor Dakota Underground, and the concrete supplier Strata Corporation. The Main Avenue University Drive to 2nd Street project in downtown Fargo was a full reconstruction of all underground utilities and included new concrete pavements and sidewalks with improved ADA accessibility, new lighting and street and signal systems, and North Dakota's first multi-lane roundabout and a new concrete bridge deck. The project also introduced a counterflow lane on University Drive to allow motorists another access point to downtown Fargo. Prior to design and construction, economic studies were conducted to determine the best use of the existing footprint of Main Avenue and to balance the varying needs of businesses along the route. The results of the studies were incorporated into the final design. Concrete was chosen as the building material for the mainline pavement, bridge deck, sidewalks, sloped planter beds, and project boulevards. Concrete was selected because it provides a low-maintenance, long-lasting surface that blends well with existing NDDOT and City of Fargo projects around the area. The project team worked with its concrete suppliers, the project owner, and quality control firms to develop concrete mix designs to meet several challenging placement areas while still abiding by industry, state, and city specifications. Many decorative elements were introduced into this project to improve safety for pedestrians and the traveling public, as well as the aesthetics of the otherwise urban area. The use of colored and stamped concrete was utilized on some of the boulevard spaces, and concrete paving blocks with alternating patterns and colors were added to some ADA landings. In addition, concrete planters and curb beds allowed for approximately 150 trees, 200 shrubs, and 2,500 perennial plants to be planted along Main Avenue. Accepting the award on behalf of the entire project team is Vince Frost from Strata Corporation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the North Dakota Ready Mix Association and Concrete Products for accepting this award, recognizing the street paving award. It was in phase 2 of a 2-year project. Late start on this project. We work closely with Apex Engineering and SRF Consulting Groups. I thank James Mickelson for his work on it, and Jacob Nordic from SRF on that project, and Dakota Underground for giving us the opportunity to supply concrete to that project again. It's always tough doing a main artery street in a road during any time of the year, and especially this year. So I want to thank Dave Johnson from Dakota Underground to work in his schedule to work with our schedule. Again, I want to thank the North Dakota Ready Mix Association for recognizing this award, the Street Paving Award. Thank you.
A substantial amount of time, energy, study, and public and business feedback was incorporated into this design, resulting in a much-needed public improvement that will serve the needs of the community for many years to come. Our final award for the 2020 Gold Star Excellence in Concrete Awards program is the Sustainable Design category. This year's winner is the 2nd Street South Floodwall System and Closure Structures in Fargo. The project owner is the City of Fargo, the design firm Houston Moore Group, the contractor Industrial Builders, and the concrete supplier Strata Corporation. Built along the Red River, the City of Fargo and its allies have fought to protect residents and businesses from floods for decades. This has included constructing miles of emergency levees during flood events more than a dozen times since 1969. To provide a more comprehensive flood protection, project partners created a series of permanent flood control structures throughout the community. Concrete struck the right balance between affordability and reliability for this project. The flood walls, built of concrete, last longer, maintain their appearance longer, have less chance of leakage, and can better withstand debris and ice from flooding and a potential collision from a motorist. The project adhered to strict requirements set by FEMA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. In addition, the project team sought and found numerous ways to create infrastructure that feels at home between the busy downtown on one side and the scenic river on the other. The project team incorporated many sustainable elements, including the use of light-colored pavement, helping to reduce urban heat island effect while also improving safety with greater visibility. Life cycle costs were also improved with concrete by ensuring the project will last for many years to come, saving on public funds in the long run. Accepting the Sustainable Design Award on behalf of the project team, once again, is Vince Frost from Strata.
Welcome. I'd like to thank the North Dakota Ready Mix Association for recognizing this Gold Star Award on the 2nd Street Flood System and Closure Structures. The City of Fargo is the owner of this project, and Houston Engineering, Moore Engineering Group were the co-engineering groups on this. Was another flood wall with diverse admixtures, special mixes, and it's always an opportunity for us to showcase some of those products. And this was another one of those jobs that we got to do that. Working closely with industrial builders. John, the superintendent on site, was very understanding to some of the cold weather conditions that we had on this project, some of the time during the early flood. But it was the project went well. And it's a beautiful looking flood wall, showpiece for downtown. People going back and forth between Minnesota and North Dakota. Very nice project. Again, I want to thank the North Dakota Ready Mix Association for recognizing this award and for all the participants involved in it. Thank you.
As Vince mentioned, thousands of motorists pass by and see the project on a daily basis. The aesthetics of the project were given careful consideration to ensure that the new infrastructure truly enhanced the area while serving the greater purpose of flood protection for the city and its residents. Well, those were some fantastic awards. Thank you for all who helped build these outstanding projects. They are a true testament to the infrastructure improvements that better the lives of citizens of North Dakota. All outstanding achievements and all definitely worthy of recognition. Recipients of the Gold Star Awards will receive plaques commemorating their achievements. In addition, a Gold Star Awards publication will be available online, as will a recording of this program. Check ndconcrete.com next week for more information. Before we close, here are a few more items to note. As mentioned earlier, one of the focus areas of our organization is education, and we have a lot of great opportunities for you coming up in 2021. For those of you looking to receive or renew certifications through the American Concrete Institute, we will be hosting several classes in the upcoming months. Thank you to all of you who've been patiently waiting for the 2021 ACI class calendar. As you can imagine, trying to plan for any in-person events during this time takes extra consideration. The classes will be a hybrid model with some online instruction, and in-person hands-on training will be lessened to allow for proper social distancing. Registration information will be emailed shortly. For now, please save the dates on your calendar. Note that additional classes or locations can be added based on demand and class size. We also are sponsoring a Sustainable Structures web series. This series was developed by concrete associations from throughout the Midwest. The goal of the cooperative effort is to bring a greater awareness on the sustainable and resilient nature of concrete building systems to the design, construction, and development communities. The 5-part series runs once a week through February 10th. AIA and PDH credits are available, and there is no registration fee. To learn more, visit the web address on your screen or the Events tab on our website. Until we can host in-person trainings again in greater numbers, we have embraced the online learning platform for educational opportunities this year. We recently agreed to partner with the Minnesota Concrete Council and other Upper Midwest state associations to sponsor a series of free online training sessions throughout 2021. Registration for these events will be emailed 1 month prior and is required to ensure participants receive a certificate of attendance that allows them to receive 1 PDH or 1 AIA credit. In addition to these opportunities, our national affiliates will host a variety of virtual and on-demand seminars throughout 2021. So how do you stay informed? First, sign up for our email alerts. If you're not on our list already, please email Savannah Schmidt, our executive assistant, at sschmidt@agcnd.org and ask to be added. Second, follow our social media. We invite you to like us on Facebook at North Dakota Concrete Council. You can also find us on Twitter at ConcreteND. You can also visit our website, ndconcrete.com, and look at our events tab, find other online resources, access our membership directory, view archives of our monthly e-news publication, and more. Or you can feel free to contact me direct at the information on your screen. My information can also be found on our website. Finally, if you've liked what you've seen and want to become part of the NDRM&CPA, we would welcome your membership. We offer a variety of levels. Details are on our website. Again, on behalf of the association, thank you for being with us today. We hope you have enjoyed yourselves over the past 2 days and have maybe learned a thing or two at our virtual event. Here's to a safe and productive construction season in 2021.